Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks. I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. And also joining us for the episode is Matt Burrows, a fellow collector who joined me at the National. And many of you may know Matt better as Tomcat_sports cards on Instagram. So, as the title would kind of indicate, and as that intro alluded to, this episode will be all about the 2023 National Sports Collectors Convention, which is in Chicago at the end of July. And as is the case following card shows that either Aaron or I attend, we generally do kind of like a recap episode afterward, just sharing about our experience and some pickups and things like that. And obviously, with Matt having joined me at the show, I wanted to have him on to share about his experience as well. So kind of how we'll do this is we'll just go kind of day by day, kind of going back and forth about our experiences and our pickups and stuff. Both Matt and I were there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I don't know if you want to start with your experience first, Matt, or maybe what would be better is if we kind of just did kind of like some general takeaways from the show or observations, like how we were kind of discussing before we started recording.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it. It's great to join you guys, and it's been great to interact with you over the last few years. And obviously, it was awesome to see you and hang out with you at the National. Would have been great to have Aaron there, but we need to give him some money for a plane ticket. So maybe
That
next
would be
time he'll
great.
come on down.
Yeah, maybe next time, a trip to the Nationals sounds pretty good. I would be totally lost with the other sports, but I think that'd be just such a cool thing to attend. But for now, I'm okay with the expo, right in my backyard. So for now, I'm okay.
Yeah, we'll have to get up there and join you hopefully soon. But yeah, I think we had it was great because Eric and I got to chat the day before we went, kind of going over what our expectations would be. And going into this whole thing, just like I'm sure it is for you too, Aaron, and when you go to the expo, it's more about being able to socialize with fellow collectors. And that's what the priority was for me. I wasn't really going there expecting to find anything, let alone Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that was more of a just if there's something there, there's something there. But so I think in general, that was the thing that I was most excited about. I had no idea what we were in store for when we first walked through those doors. I'll throw this one to Eric, but I had gone in 2019 and I wasn't looking for hockey at the time. I wish I was because it was probably cheap and all in the boxes that I would have been digging through. So, anyways, when I got there, yeah, I just couldn't believe what we saw. Eric, it was just like so overwhelming.
It was. Yeah. For those who didn't attend or haven't attended a national before, the convention center in Chicago kind of has like, I would say like one main convention hall that they have pretty much always used for these shows. And then they kind of have like an adjacent one that's a lot smaller. It's still a good size, but definitely much smaller than the main showroom. And that's kind of the space that they typically have used in the past is those two rooms. And they were using both of those as usual this time, but they were also using a completely additional showroom, which was basically probably the same size as the main one anyway. So, you normally have a lot of space between those rooms, but then adding on that third room maybe didn't quite double the amount of space, but it was substantially more. I believe I read an article that said it was like 600,000 square feet of floor space for the show, which is just bonkers. So, and having gone to the Chicago National, I think like probably a handful of times before this year, I kind of figured that it was going to just be those two rooms. And then when I discovered that there was this new additional room, I was just like completely blown away, overwhelmed, like, oh wow, like this just keeps going and going and going and going. So yeah, that was definitely a lot to take in, but definitely a fun way to kind of just get in the mindset.
How do you I'm just going to jump in here. So when you talk about that extra space and, you first get there, what's your kind of game plan? You see all that space, what are you guys thinking? First, this is insane. But after that, what are you guys thinking? How do I sort of attack this? Where do I go? After I go where I want to go, where do I go next? Do I circle back? What were you guys thinking?
I have to imagine too, Aaron, that is substantially bigger than the expo. Does that sound like
It sounds bigger. I mean, the expo is huge, and I guess it's similar thing where you got to have a game plan because it is massive. But yeah, I mean, it sounds huge. It sounds bigger. So that is, and like it's kind of hard because you guys don't know who has hockey. So a guy right in front of you might have hockey. You know, another guy at the farthest point away from you might have hockey as well. So it's like you got to circle around to everybody and see what they have and sort of remember where these hockey guys are. And so it's probably quite challenging. So yeah, what were you guys thinking?
Well, I know for myself, I kind of wanted to stick to the main showroom the first day, and Eric he'll probably talk about what he had some other things he had to do right off the bat. So we I don't even think we saw each other until the end of the day that day because we were so busy doing different things. But for me, I said, don't let yourself wander into other areas because the whole squirrel like you just can't stay focused if you're just kind of wandering aimlessly. So I stuck to the
I do
floor.
that.
You do that.
I do that. I'll admit, like at the expo, I'm just wandering everywhere, and then I'm like, oh wait, I went here before. Cool, and then I,
It's so
I
so
would
hard not
like
to do that, man.
great
It is so hard not to
game
do that.
plan. Like I
Yeah.
was, just gonna say like that is a great game plan. Like forcing yourself to one room, for a little while until you fully circle around and then moving on. That is a really good game plan. Maybe I should adopt that.
I saw people with like little maps and they were like crossing off one by one. I'm like, all right, I don't got time for that, man.
I
Like
love
this is
maps.
it was, I mean, the one map I saw, I mean, you had to like go like this and put it up to your eyeball to even see it. I'm like, you know what? I will just visually, I'm a visual learner. I will start remembering, this is where upper deck is, this is where that is. So I kind of took sections, and the first day was just a scope out day. Eric and I talked about that. Like, don't dig through boxes. The rare, flurry out of 10 or whatever, the Jalmerson 101 is not going to probably sit in a dollar box. So you don't have to worry about that. So just kind of cover the general floor. And yeah, the first day was surprisingly lucky for me. But before I share that, I know, Eric, did you kind of have a game plan as well? Because I know you had to run off to, yeah, anyways, I'll let you tell about that.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Aaron, I think my kind of strategy, I would say in general at the show, but especially this year, like Matt kind of alluded to, I had a couple of things that I needed to get done right when I got there on Thursday morning. So I took care of those and I'll share about those later. But once I was done with those, that's kind of when I discovered that there was this additional hall that was being used. So I was like, okay, let me look around here a little bit. And kind of as I kept going, I realized that it just kept going and going and going and going. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go all the way down and just start at one edge and just start snaking my way through the aisles. So that's kind of how I do it, is just start at one edge, one corner, and then just work your way through. And like Matt was saying, and I think is probably the best way to do it, is kind of just get an idea of what's there, as far as, types of booths and things like that. And, fortunately for me, I would say I have a really good eye that I can kind of just be strolling past a booth and tell whether or not there's something there for me or not. And given that there's not much hockey at the National comparatively, it's pretty easy to just say, oh, yeah, like this booth doesn't have anything for me. I'm just going to keep on rolling. So that's kind of how I did it. Is I just went through that additional hall on the first day, and yeah, just kind of picked my way through. And same thing with the in between hall and then the main hall later on. Just kind of taking inventory of what's there, and then obviously if you see something that you want, grab it. But it's also not bad to kind of make those mental notes of, okay, this guy has a lot of hockey. Like, I'll keep that in mind. Maybe I'll come back later, stuff like that. So yeah, I would say that's kind of how I tackled it. And yeah, I think it's almost not that you have to do it that way, but I feel like that's the best way to not feel ridiculously overwhelmed. Because if you are kind of just scatterbrained going all over the place, there's probably no way that you'd really be able to ensure that you see everything. So yeah, I think that's just a good way to go about it. And I think I was saying this to you, Matt, and I know I said this to a couple other people, but I can't imagine going to the National as like a baseball collector or a basketball collector or a football collector, because you could literally spend weeks going through all of the booths if you were collecting a main sport. So the fact that we're just hockey guys, I mean, I know Matt, you collect some other stuff too, but generally we're kind of looking for hockey. So that actually, in a way, almost makes it feel more attainable because you can just say, okay, this booth is all baseball. Like, I'm not going to waste my time looking and just keep moving. So while it's kind of, maybe you might wish that there was more hockey there, on the flip side, it's also probably a good thing that there isn't, because if there was, there's just no way that you could scale through everything.
That's kind of like the expo is what you described. It's that level of
True.
insanity. Every booth basically is hockey. So yeah, that's awesome. So that's a great plan of attack, I think. So, and I gotta ask, did any of you guys get lost? And I don't mean get lost like a 5-year-old in a mall. I mean like, you thought you were going down, an aisle that you thought you were down earlier, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, where am I? Type thing. Because it just seems, and plus the added space we talked about earlier, just so just crazy there.
I just made landmarks, tag grading at both the main floor and the secondary main floor. Those were the two landmarks I made, because there was that breaker section, which was just, every time you walk through there, so, just it was definitely a spectacle in itself. But I made landmarks in each of the not the floors, but the sections there. I made landmarks. Upper deck was the easy one, obviously, because it's kind of in the back center, so you could either go right or left from there. And then the main tag place where you could see the grading happening, that was kind of the entrance into the other main section. So I just kind of made that, and I got lost once. I remember, just because I didn't realize how big it really was. Back in 2019, it was just one floor, so you could easily, like, there's upper deck, there's that, there's PSA, I know where I'm at. So yeah, and I have to say too, a good plan of attack. It was really fun for me the first and the third day. The first day I was there with my friend Jeremy, and he and I kind of walked part of it. And then with the third day, I was with Eric, and we covered a ton of ground in like 3 hours, 2 hours. We picked a section and we just weaved our way back and forth. And I think one time Eric's like, no, 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 come back. Like, we got to finish this row first. So it really is good to have a buddy there with you to kind of, not hold you accountable, but like make sure you guys are covering as much ground and being efficient. And so I think that really made a huge difference. And I don't think we would have seen half as much as we did that last day. We both found some really cool things that were, show pickups, and we wouldn't have done that without kind of tag teaming it along the way. So definitely a good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. I would say there were probably a couple of times, I don't know, probably the third day actually, which it seems like you wouldn't do it on the third day, but there were a couple times where I caught myself thinking I was going down a new aisle, and then I was like, oh no, I've already seen that booth, and being confused at myself that I somehow got in that situation. But yeah, I mean, once you realize that, then you're like, oh, okay, I need to go over to the next row and kind of get back on track. But yeah, I feel like that's probably a pretty good like introduction to our overall experience at the show. Matt, do you want to start going through your Thursday recap and pickups and experiences?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and for anybody that's been to a big card show, Aaron, obviously at the expo, the first day, I don't think anybody really, you either have an amazing first day, or your first day is just like, I haven't found anything because I'm so overwhelmed. So I really went in there thinking, I'm not going to leave with anything today. I don't plan on it. Maybe one card. I knew there was a Flurry Be a Player sticker auto somewhere in an area that I was, and I was able to find that right off the bat. So I'm like, cool, I got my card. I don't have it. I found a Flurry I don't have at the National. What are the odds? Like, I wasn't expecting that at all. Kind of made my way past that, and I find this guy with a bunch of hockey jerseys hanging up, and I'm like, oh, I see Penguins jerseys. Something just like, get over there. So I go over and introduce myself, and I look down, and there's, a top 10 most wanted Marc-Andre Fleury card sitting right in front of me. And I was just like, this is crazy. What are the odds this thing is here? It was the Black Diamond Championship banner auto, which the non-autos go for like $60 to $80 of him when they show up. So I couldn't believe it. I'm just like beside myself. So Jeremy walks over, say, hey, like relax, because I was just so overwhelmed. All he had was hockey. Couldn't believe it. So I was able to get a good deal on that. And then I didn't even realize there was also a Quad Cup Foundations patch out of 10 sitting there that I didn't have either, which is like, this is just like, I can leave now. Like, so you talked about strategies too, which we didn't mention, but I came with enough cash that I knew if I found like the diamond, flawless diamond out of 5, or something else really rare that I needed that I could leave with that card using cash. So because I had cash, I was able to kind of talk him down a little bit. And then to kind of end my day that day, we were talking about his jerseys he had, and he brings out a 2016 Flurry playoff game worn jersey, and he's like, "You want to hold this thing?" And I'm just like, "Well, that depends on how much it costs." He said, "Well, like $15,000." I'm like, "Why don't you hold on to that?" And then he goes, "You can try it on if you want, take a picture." I'm like, "No, dude. Like, if it was '09, sure, I would have definitely put it on, but I asked him to put it back. I didn't even want to like breathe on the thing, but it was an amazing first day. It flew by so fast. All of a sudden I looked down and it's Eric's like, "All right, man, it's time to go." So it was honestly, if that was my only day there, I would have called it a major win. But yeah, it was good, really good first day. Kind of got the lay of the land, saw where everything is, so I knew how I was going to attack things the next day.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think, and we said this multiple times throughout the weekend, but if all you came away with from the show was those two cards, like you would have been over the moon. So, yeah, the fact that you did get those and obviously some other stuff, pretty great show.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I remember saying out loud, this everything else from here on out is the cherry on the sundae. That whole phrase. I mean, I knew that no matter what happened, if I didn't find another card, I would have fun looking at everything in there, and I would focus on interacting with my friends in the hobby, people that we've all met on Instagram and on YouTube, and that was just, I was like, all right, I don't have to worry about anything from here on out. This was totally worth it.
And you mentioned there too, being able to interact with friends and meet different people and stuff. I know you had a pretty fun experience on Thursday night as well, if you want to talk about that.
Oh boy, I'm trying to remember what happened on Thursday night. It was such a blur. I remember what you did on Thursday night. That was what I was so pumped about. And then of course we got to watch it after, and you're going to talk about that. But you'll have to give me a reminder, like what else happened? Who else did we meet?
The dinner.
This is great.
Okay, there we go. See, thank you, because I was thinking pizza, because that's been on my mind. That pizza was so good. But yeah, that was sure fascinating to get to that dinner that Mitch set up, Grotman Cards, and meet all these hockey collectors. And the funny thing was, I'm sure Aaron, you're probably going to do the same thing. Many of us haven't seen pictures of these people. You know their tags on Instagram, right? And then these
Oh,
these
yeah,
guys,
that happens all the time.
right? I'm sure you would have asked the same question I did, and so these people are like coming up, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Matt," and they're like, "Yeah, I'm Daniel." I'm like, I have no idea what that means. So I said, "Who are you on social media?" I'm Da Vincent or whatever. I'm like, "Oh yeah, the stack sale guy. I'm Tomcat Sports Cards." So it was really cool to meet just a variety of collectors, guys that whose collections I definitely admire, and I love seeing their passion for the hobby, and just get to meet them in person. The one guy, he kind of, his personality fit his collection. He was very rambunctious, and then some other people were a bit more kind of low key on Instagram. Same thing. So that was really a highlight. I really wish Eric would have been able to make it, but yeah. Anyway, I'll let you talk about your Thursday. But yeah, I was completely, my cup was full by the end of the night on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely wish I could have been there. I'd planned on meeting up with a friend from high school for dinner that night, and it kind of fell apart at the last minute, but I was already back home, and it wouldn't have really made sense to drive like 40 minutes back to the show to go to dinner and stuff. So unfortunately missed out on that, but obviously got to hear a few pretty fun stories from that since Matt was able to attend. But yeah, for my Thursday, kind of as I alluded to earlier, had a couple things that I wanted to get out of the way first. Unfortunately, I'll start with probably like the biggest disappointment of the show. Ahead of the show, probably like a couple weeks ahead of time, a lot of you probably know who Nat Turner is at PSA. And he had tweeted out basically saying, hey, if anybody has any big dollar cards that they have graded by a different company and they want to switch over to being graded by PSA, reach out to me. And, if I approve of it, then we'll connect at the show and we can do a free review of the card to cross over to PSA. And then obviously if it meets your requirements, then at that point, then you would pay the grading fee. But just the review of the card would be free. So obviously that's, a pretty, good deal, because normally it's just you submit the card for the crossover service, and if it meets it, you pay. If it doesn't meet it, you still pay. So the fact that he was willing to do the free review obviously was a pretty enticing thing. So I reached out to him in regard to my George Vezina rookie card since it's graded by SGC. And I'd always kind of wanted to cross it over to PSA or had thought about doing it in the past and just had never really gotten around to it. So then obviously when he offered that on Twitter, I was like, okay, like this is a good opportunity to do this. So I reached out to him and showed him the card and we talked a little bit about it. And he was like, yep, like that sounds good. You know, whenever you are at the show, just stop by the PSA booth and find me and we'll get you taken care of. So I was like, okay, great, sounds good. So Thursday morning, I was like, okay, PSA is probably going to be a total zoo the entire show. So I want to get there first thing Thursday morning and just go straight there to try to avoid any lines and hopefully speed up this process. So that's what we did. You know, as soon as we got there and went in, that's kind of Matt when you went and started exploring the main show floor. And then I went over to the PSA booth, which was kind of in that middle joining room. So I went there and stood in line. And since it was first thing in the morning, the line wasn't too bad. It was probably only took like 5 or 10 minutes to actually get up to the counter. And they were like, oh yeah, like Nat isn't here right now, so just like stand off to the side, you know, and we'll tell him that you're here and have him come over and meet with you. So I was like, okay, sounds great. So time kind of keeps going by, and like, okay, like I wonder how long this is gonna take, blah blah blah. And it just feels like forever and ever and ever, and that he's never gonna be there. So eventually an hour and a half goes by and he finally shows up. And you know, can't blame him at all. I know he's a busy guy and there's a lot for them to be doing there. So no fault of his own there at all. But yeah, so after an hour and a half, he comes over, talks to me, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm Eric. We had talked about the card and I, you know, give him the card and he's like, oh yeah, yeah, like I remember this one. Okay. Like let's come over here and do some paperwork. So like, okay, sounds great. So we kind of start going through the process and then he says like, oh, like what is this worth? And I was like, oh, well, it's kind of hard to say because they don't come up super often, but you know, probably like $5,000, $6,000, something in that neighborhood. And he was like, oh, well, we're only doing this for cars that are like 25,000 or more. And I was like, okay. And he's basically just like, yeah, like, sorry, like you're kind of out of luck. But like, if you want to just submit it, you can do that. And I was like, okay, I guess like I'll see you later then. So it was just frustrating because obviously I more or less wasted an hour and a half just kind of waiting around. But the biggest thing was, you know, just frustrating that he had given me prior approval on that card already and then didn't honor his word on it. So yeah, that was definitely a pretty frustrating experience to start the show. So yeah, definitely that was the low light of the show for me. Obviously, it got better from there, which is good. But yeah, just a not a great way to start, you know, feeling that you just totally wasted a lot of time. And thankfully, you know, knowing that we were going to be there for 3 days kind of helped redeem that because if I had only been able to go for one day and I just wasted a lot of that time, that would have been really bad. So at least, you know, knowing that we had more time made it a little bit more manageable of the time being spent there. But anyway, not to harp on that too much, but definitely a notable experience for sure. But from there, switching to a different grading company, I had actually brought a couple of cards that I wanted to submit to Tag. And I know that you mentioned them earlier in the show, Matt, but I've just been really kind of intrigued by Tag since they're definitely a newer company in the grading game and, you know, definitely do things a little bit differently than the other grading companies do, at least the, you know, kind of the more well-known ones. So I had kind of decided on a couple cards that I wanted to bring, and I'll get to those later. But thankfully, their process was extremely quick, extremely efficient, like super easy. So I probably didn't spend more than like 5 minutes at their booth getting these two cards submitted for grading. So it was like, yeah, like this is how that's supposed to go. So that was kind of an interesting juxtaposition there between the two. Obviously, I know people love PSA and stuff, but yeah, I think you know, Tag is definitely doing a lot of things right, which we will get into later on when I show off the cards that I had graded. But yeah, so I dropped those off, and then at that point, that's when I kind of discovered that this additional hall was actually like full of booths and everything. So that's when I ended up going to the one edge and kind of started picking my way through. And I would say like I was definitely still kind of like thrown off by the whole PSA experience. So I was just like I don't know if like rattled is the right word, but just like I wasn't on my game. Like the first few aisles, I was still like trying to just like get back in the mindset of like, okay, I'm looking for cards, like what's going on here and stuff. So kind of was just working my way through, and I think probably like 4 aisles in, kind of just saw a card that caught my eye. And initially, it actually caught my eye for Josh Packham, who's obviously a friend of the show. He collects, Alex Ovechkin, not like as a super collector, but he has a pretty substantial Ovechkin collection. So I saw this card and was just like, hey, like I wonder if he would be interested in it. If he wants it, I'll pick it up and grab it for him, and we'll figure it out later. So just grabbed a picture of it, sent it to him, and then I'm kind of standing there waiting to see if he'll reply. And the more and more I keep thinking about it, the more and more I'm like, this is a really sweet card. Like I might just kind of want to get this thing for myself. So without even hearing back from him, I kind of just talked to the vendor and just say, hey, like, what can you kind of do on this? And kind of went back and forth a little bit, but came to a price that I thought, was fair. I wouldn't say it was like a really good deal, but I thought was fair for what it is, and grabbed it and just said, if I end up keeping this for myself, like I'm good with that because it's a really cool card. So I know Matt really liked this one too, but Aaron, I'll show you since you obviously haven't seen any of this stuff, but it's from the new Leaf Art of Hockey. It's a museum of materials numbered out of
Okay, that's
five.
a pretty cool release.
Of course. Yes, it is. A lot of really, really pretty cards in that product for sure. And this one is no different. Numbered out of five, of course, of Ovechkin, like I said.
Oh, that's really nice. That's so cool. That's awesome. Great patch on that thing. Nice jersey tag there. That's awesome. Always
Yeah.
love when they include those cards.
Yep.
Who
So
says cards can't be cool without a picture? I mean, it's a great card.
true. I mean, it'd be nicer if it pictured Ovechkin, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, having a huge, pretty much half of the McGray group jersey tag is pretty awesome. And what I didn't realize at the time that I bought it, I ended up discovering this when I got in the car at the end of the day. But obviously, on the tag, it has kind of like the certification number for the jersey, and you can go on their website and look up, when the jersey was worn and stuff like that. So once I got in the car, I was like, okay, like now that I can kind of breathe, I'm gonna look up when this thing was used. So I looked it up on their site, and I could tell just based on the tag that it was from 2016-17. So that kind of helped me narrow it down. And then on their report, go through, find the number that matches up with the tag, and discover that it was actually from one of their like retro jerseys, which I like those way better than the just their normal home and away. And it was from the 100th season. So that's also kind of a cool little bonus. But what's really cool about it is that it was actually just worn for one single game. And that game just so happened to be against the Chicago Blackhawks. So that kind of almost like reassured me that, yep, like this was a good card for you to pick up. So yeah, definitely, and I know Matt will get into stuff that fits in this category more as well, but this is absolutely the definition of like a show pickup, like something that if I saw it on Facebook or on eBay or whatever, I probably wouldn't think much of it. Definitely wouldn't make a play on it, wouldn't acquire it. Like still would think it's cool, but just wouldn't really, pursue it at all. But, just the fact that it's sitting there right in front of you and you can really appreciate it for what it is and, see it with your own eyes and stuff just kind of makes you say, yep, like that's a really cool card that I want to grab. So yeah, that's kind of like the epitome of a show pickup for me. And I'm definitely glad I did because I would say that that was probably my best pickup of the show. So not that there weren't any other good pickups because I'll get to those later, but yeah, definitely was happy with that one and definitely glad that I did go ahead and do that. So that was like my first pickup of the show and definitely felt good about that one. Then turning gears, going into the show, I also knew that Thursday was kind of going to be, less so about looking for cars and more so kind of about other commitments. I obviously talked about the PSA experience, but then I have a friend of mine who is a beat reporter for the Blackhawks. He works for a company called CHGO Sports, and they have just like groups of people that cover each of the Chicago sports franchises. So they have like a Cubs group and a Bears group and a Bulls group and a Sox group and the Blackhawks and on and on and on. And they kind of have a more laid back, casual style where they still do reporting. They still go to games and, cover the games and go to the press conferences and all that you'd see from other beat reporters. But they just have a much more like laid back, casual style which I think is really great because it just makes it more relatable for the everyday fan. And part of that is they have a daily live podcast that they do on YouTube. And CHGO Sports decided that they were going to have each of their groups do their show live from the National on Thursday. Normally they just do it from their studio in their office, but they said, hey, this is in Chicago this year. Let's go do the show from the National. So I saw that they were going to do that. So I reached out to my buddy and just said, hey, like, I'll be there. It'd be really cool if, we could meet up and chat for a minute, hang out. We hadn't seen each other in quite a few years. So it's like, hey, like, it'd be awesome to just hang out and catch up for a few minutes. And he was like, yeah, well, how about you actually come join us on our show and you can talk about cards and stuff since, it's going to be at the National and we're kind of here to cover that and stuff. So if you want to jump on the show and just talk about cards for a while, like, that'd be awesome. So that was really, really fun. That was probably one of my highlights of the show, just being able to do that and meet some new people through that and just talk about cards, and brought some cards to show off on their show, which I know they really enjoyed and was a lot of fun to just kind of show off some interesting pieces that way. Some of you might have seen that we had shared about that, their podcast episode at the time on our social media. So some of you might have already seen the episode, but for those who have not seen or heard it at this point, I'm going to go ahead and drop it into our episode here right now. So obviously this audio and video from their podcast is courtesy of CHGO Sports and the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
All right. Joining us now on the show, he's way over there. Hey, Eric. How's it going? Eric Andrews from the Center Ice Card Cast. This is a sports card collecting expert. I am not a sports card collecting expert, Eric, but I want to start before we get into to your expertise, which is fascinating to me being at the show. We walked in here, and the biggest face we saw so far was Connor Bedard. Mm-hmm. What does a player like that do for the hockey card market?
It's huge, honestly. Obviously, for the four major sports, hockey is definitely fourth, especially in the card landscape. So when you get a generational talent like Connor Bedard coming in, and especially playing for a big market team like the Blackhawks, it's huge. Because not only, do you get your hockey fans and your fans of that team, but you also have people just from the city that are, going to buy into that hype and want to collect his cards and stuff too. So, yeah, I mean, his impact on the hobby will be huge, no doubt.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Say, May 8th doesn't go our way, and it's the Columbus Blue Jackets that get number one. I mean, you got to think the folks at Upper Deck are ecstatic that he's in a Blackhawk jersey and not playing for Arizona or Columbus, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's good for them, too, because obviously the more interest there is, the more of their product is going to sell. So, yeah, I'm sure they are thrilled about that.
Well, and this, convention is, the biggest that I think I've ever seen or heard of in the card collecting community. And, just here we've seen a wall of Bedard jerseys. We've seen a big poster from him from Upper Deck. So when you have these kind of events where everyone is coming in, everyone, in the collecting community and in the crossover with the hockey community, that's where you're going to see, kids of these generations. We were talking about it off the air before the show in a different way. But kids of this generation, they latch on to, a lot of the top athletes. You'll have kids in Chicago rooting for LeBron James. You'll got, Steph Curry. You got people who live in, California cheering for Aaron Rodgers when, he's playing in New York and Green Bay. You have that now of a player in Chicago that could captivate, fan bases from all these different areas. So when you have something like this, it's like an opportunity for people from all over the place to come and get that memorabilia and be able to blow that up outside of just in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually here with a friend from Alaska, actually. So he flew down for this. He's a big Marc-Andre Fleury fan and collector. I know he's been having a good time today. And, yeah, I mean, like you said, it just brings people from every corner of the collecting universe. I mean, people flying internationally, from overseas and everything. So, yeah, I mean, this is as big as it gets for not only cards, but, I mean, it's also memorabilia and other things, too.
That's what I want to ask you about as we got here early and we're wandering the convention center, and we see these vendors with cases and cases and cases of cards, and you see that $500, $700, $2,000, and they've got 15, 20 of these cases. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea how do they travel with this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, do they fly with all these things like packed up? Like, what are the logistics of it? Maybe you don't know, and if you don't know, that's cool. But like, what are the logistics of one of these major card vendors traveling and getting their stuff sold at one of these shows?
Yeah, it's definitely a case-by-case type of situation. If it's just like an individual that has their own booth, depending on where they live, they might drive, they might fly. I mean, if I was doing it and I was from far away, I would probably want to drive and make sure that I'm kind of in control of my stuff. As far as like the big retailers that are selling boxes of cards and they just have, hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory, obviously they've got pretty good insurance to help, minimize any potential issues there. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing to think about for sure.
Yeah, this place, it's insane how big it is and how much stuff is out there. Like,
I can't.
It's overload. Like, Jay and I did a lap when we got here, and within 15 minutes, it's like I cannot process anything else that's going. There's just too much stuff, and I don't have enough money for nearly everything I want to buy.
Cal Ripken jersey, though, Greg.
Stop.
$300.
Stop. It was a hell of a deal.
Is that Zach Ryder?
Is it?
I think that was Zach Ryder.
Woo. That's Zach Ryder?
No. The other guy. The other guy that was
Hulk
the
Hogan.
edge head. Not Zach Ryder.
Iron Cheek.
No.
Yokozuna.
It'll come to me later.
Bam,
Anyway,
Bigelow.
sorry, I derailed everything.
Yes. Anyway, I was going to ask Eric. You're the hockey collectible guy. You know a lot more. I just open 90s card packs on TikTok. That's all I do. And I mispronounce everybody's name. But if someone wants to get in and they want to start collecting Connor Bedard, like, is there something that's already out that's like already that must-have item, or is it coming out as the season starts? Like, what's to look for if you want to start on the bottom floor at Connor Bedard memorabilia? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, as far as cards, he has a deal with Upper Deck, so they also have a contract with the CHL. So he's had CHL cards for a couple of years already. So a lot of people have been going after those. The thing with that is kind of once guys get NHL cards, then those CHL cards become a little bit less desirable because people want the NHL stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, as the 23-24 products start coming out, that's really when you're going to see people start to really get more involved and wanting to pick up that kind of stuff. Probably Upper Deck Series 2 will be the first product that he's really in. That'll be his Young Guns rookie card, which is kind of like the staple, iconic rookie card that everyone wants.
We have a question in our chat, and I think it's something I've asked you before.
Sure.
About 90s hockey cards, and this comes from Nate. It says, why are all my 90s hockey cards worthless now? And I from my parents' basement, found an old box of like 1991 cards from, I think it's called Score.
Sure.
And I asked you one time, I was like, oh, these are some notable players. Like, is this worth anything? And you're like, yeah, probably about $2. How come some cards from that era can be worth hundreds of dollars and some are just a couple cents?
The simple answer, most everything from that era was grossly overproduced. So that's why it just doesn't hold value. There are, rare instances where there is something that might have been a lot more scarce at the time and, now is really hard to find. So that type of thing can hold value and even increase in value over time. But as far as just kind of the everyday type of stuff, the scorecards, stuff like that, the value just isn't there because there were so many printed.
Yeah.
What is your prized possession in terms of cards?
I've got a couple of them here. We can go into those or we can get to them later, whatever.
Yeah, let's see.
Let's see
what you got. You got them
All
on the
right.
table.
Sure. So we'll start off. I'll save the two big ones for the end. But first one, for the producers, it's the horizontal Tony Esposito. So there's kind of just an assortment of stuff here, kind of cool, unique things. So this first one has a piece of cinder block or brick or something from the Chicago Stadium.
Oh, cool.
In the card.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
That's
just
awesome.
a kind of unique, cool little piece.
Try not to smudge it up. I know we didn't wash our hands after meeting
all
Yarmir
good.
It's in
Jagr.
a
I
thick
got
enough
nacho
case.
cheese on your card, my
It's all
friend.
right. It's got this card now has Yarmir Jagr's DNA.
There we go.
It's worth even more now.
It's worth more.
So
That card's going to score 30 goals in the Czech League next year.
That is so cool.
How did you come across
That's
that?
a lot. There's only 29 of these in the world.
Yes.
Holy! What is this worth?
That's probably like $50-ish. So
I'll steal somewhere.
Oh, Jay's unimpressed.
yeah,
Well, I got to see what I'm stealing.
they made these of a lot of different like legendary hawks. So there's a lot more than just the 29. But for Esposito, there's 29.
Real quick, I want to ask you too. I noticed there was a card down there. It was, I've seen the ones with jersey patch in there. I know Greg opened Jamie Ben one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It was so those jersey patch ones, are they more valuable if there's like part of the logo on them?
Yep.
Okay, so the value changes based on what you can make out of the jersey.
Yes.
Cool.
Probably why the
Interesting.
Jamie Ben one I got is not worth much because I think it's just like the green,
Just the jersey
just the
material.
jersey part,
Just
yeah.
green felt.
Yep.
All right,
Yeah.
what's next?
All right, next, another Tony Esposito card. I really like stuff that has multiple different types of memorabilia. So this one has a part of his pad, jersey, glove, and stick all on the same card.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is cool. Now this says 1 of 1 on it. Is this the only
only
It's the
one?
only Wow.
one?
So
Very
how did you find this? You go to a card show and just what do you?
I
go
usually
auction, or?
buy stuff online, whether it be eBay or forums, Facebook, various online stores, stuff like that.
Have
That
you
is
ever?
cool.
Because when we've been walking around here, there have been some booths that say auction on them. Have you ever gone and got things through auctions before? Like what? Have you
Not at a show.
done that experience?
No, not at a show. I mean, obviously eBay is an auction site, so I'm very familiar with that. But as far as kind of like in the show context, not so much.
Okay.
So
All right, what we got next?
next one,
It's got it.
something that a lot of people really like, and something people chase after are cards that have the complete logo of the league that the player was playing in. So this is kind of a cool one. It's Corey Crawford, but it's from one of his AHL jerseys.
Oh, sweet.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
that looks like an Ice Hogs jersey here on the card. So that's pretty sweet. That's an old AHL logo. too.
Yes. Yep.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, Corey Crawford of the Norfolk Admirals and Rockford Ice Hogs.
So do you get do you just like target specific cards you want, or are you one of these guys that like buys a box and hope you get something cool or a little bit of both? I'm sorry.
I would say when I was little, it was more so opening boxes just because it's really enjoyable. But as I've gotten older, the value proposition is way better to just buy what you want.
Yeah.
You're going to be satisfied and get your money's worth. So, yeah, I tend to go more for just single cards at this point, but I definitely do enjoy opening boxes as well. The next one, this one's kind of a sentimental card. It's of Michel Goulet, so throwing it back a little bit.
Is
but
it got part of his mustache in there?
that
We
would
did
make
see-
it way better.
We saw Kurt Cobain's hair for sale.
Yes, we
in the
did.
booth
True.
today.
True.
Yeah.
If there's a Michel Goulet where you get like 4 mustache hairs in his card, I will buy that card.
That's amazing. Michelle's actually a good family friend of ours, so I enjoy
Oh,
picking
see?
up cards of his. And
He'll get some stash hair.
this one
gone.
actually has the nameplate off of his stick.
Holy cow.
That's cool.
I actually, while covering a Rockford Ice Hogs game, I loved Michel Goulet. Even when he was on the Nordiques before he came to the Hawks, I was covering an Ice Hogs game in the press box, like was sitting next to Michel Goulet, who was scouting for the Penguins at the time. And it took me like half the game before I realized it was Michel Goulet because he doesn't have the mustache.
Yeah.
He's completely bald now.
Yeah.
And it took me I'm like, I know this guy. And then I finally cheated and like looked over and I realized it was Michel Goulet. And it was such a really good guy.
Yeah.
Really good guy.
Absolutely.
I want to address, because it's just realizing this now, this is a very visual part of the podcast. So if you're
Yes.
listening to the audio version, go back, watch it on YouTube. You can see all of the stuff that Eric's brought to the table here that we're passing along. Really cool stuff. So check out the YouTube as well. To
You'll
get the
be able to
visual.
see our photo.
And hit that like button for us.
Yeah, smash it, as the kids say.
Keep them coming, Eric. This
All
is
right.
this is cool.
So these were obviously Hawks related. I don't only do Blackhawks, even though obviously I'm a Hawks fan, but another aspect of the hobby that I really enjoy is collecting things that represent a historical element of the sport or, a big name player, whatever it might be. So this one I think is it speaks for itself. It's a game used pad card of Vladislav Tretiak.
Ooh.
Wow.
So that's Eddie Belfour.
That is awesome.
That's some history right there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Tretiak was goaltender for the old Soviet teams. Was a goaltending coach with the Blackhawks.
He was.
if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
and that's why
Yes,
Eddie
he was.
Belfour wears number 20.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aside from when he was in Chicago, obviously.
Yeah.
is
No,
awesome.
he was the, I believe, the goalie for the Russians in the famous
Yes, he was.
Summit Series, 72.
Yep.
And
One of the greatest goalies ever. That-
And 80.
and in the 80s
Yeah.
for
in the
Miracle game.
Yep, one of the greatest goalies. I would venture out to say he's the greatest goalie that didn't play in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
All right, show us your 2 best, Eric.
Got a few more. Do you want to see the others?
Yeah, let's do them quick because we gotta make way for the next show.
Sounds
but yeah,
good.
let's just do them rapid fire.
Couple cool ones. Self-explanatory again, but a Bill Barilko stick.
Oh, that's selling in Toronto.
Alex Ovechkin skate laces.
Okay, that's awesome.
The yellow skate laces,
very cool.
the unmistakable
Yep.
Alex Ovechkin skate laces. That's awesome.
2 of 3. That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I love the Bill Barenko. That's like
I'm gonna need a
history
little
right
education on Bill Barilko. Real quick.
Maple Leafs player back 50s, 60s.
51 cup-winning goal.
Yes, and then died in
okay.
a plane crash where they never really knew what happened.
Oh,
like
wow.
a mystery. Yeah.
Interesting.
Tragically Hip wrote a song about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So then the 2 big ones, another aspect of the hobby that I've really leaned into the last couple of years that I thoroughly enjoy is collecting specific cards of George Vezina, which is obviously a huge name. So these are kind of like 2 holy grail hockey cards. So first one is a copy of his rookie card from over 100 years ago.
Wow. That is awesome. It's so small now compared to the
Yes.
the
They
normal
used to come.
cards.
They used to come in cigarette packs.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Instead of bubble gum.
Yep.
And what is the value on this?
That's probably like a $6,000 or $7,000.
Wow.
Oh boy.
That is so cool.
Don't hand it back to me. My palms just got sweaty.
Give it back to you very carefully. I don't want to be.
Handle that very
I don't want to be in
nice.
charge of that.
And then the last one, this is probably, in my opinion, the holy grail of hockey memorabilia, is one of the actual buckles off of his pads.
I've seen this card.
Oh my god.
I've seen. Wow.
That's incredible.
This is the 1 of 1. Yeah, I've seen this card online, or did they come out with multiples? And I know it says 1 of 1.
There's a green one and a gold one.
Okay, I know I've seen this online and thought it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how'd you come across that?
A guy in the UK had it. I was trying super, super hard to find one of them because, like I said, that's kind of like a holy grail type of piece.
Yeah.
So as soon as I caught wind that he had this card, I just reached out to him, and we fortunately were able to work out a deal.
That's awesome.
Wow. That is so cool. So for these kind of these special ones that have pieces of stick, obviously a pad buckle, all those things, these would not come in a pack, obviously.
Yeah, they would.
Really?
How would you not know there's a goalie?
Well,
Goalie buckle.
Buckle in the middle of
fair.
my back.
That's a little different, but for stuff like the
The
other
Ovech-
stuff, those would come in packs. And as far as the thickness and stuff, there's we were talking about this before the show. They put fillers in the packs so that all of the packs are the same thickness, so you don't know if
So
there
you can't
is
cheat
or
and
not.
squeeze them. That one's thicker. That's got a good card in it.
Interesting.
Yep.
That's very cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
How are we on time? Do we have enough time to
We
open
got
up a quick pack?
3 or 4 minutes. Yeah,
3 or 4
let's do
minutes.
it.
Let's open up some
5
packs.
minutes.
5
We got
minutes,
5
Steven
minutes.
says.
5 minutes. All right.
All right, so we can
This
open
is-
up a pack of cards
This
and
is
get our
Greg. This is
reason.
Greg's deal.
You can just do one apiece if you want.
All right.
Awesome.
Take one, pass it down.
These are
Pass it down.
Parkhurst Blackhawk Original 6 cards. I got Eric Taze on here.
Now, what year are these from?
This is from 2003-04.
Oh yes,
Pretty old school. So
A wonderful time for the Blackhawks.
yeah,
Who could forget?
got some players from the team back then in the set, so it'll be a
ASMR.
blast from the past. You got Ville Nieminen and Lassi Kukkonen and the ABC line and guys like that. So definitely kind of interesting.
I want a Mark Bell.
All right, let's see. Is there any bubble?
I got a
gum in here?
Craig Anderson,
Legend. That's good.
Park Ridge native.
Howie Morenz, Doug Wilson. Good ones. Ooh, my buffer is a Hawks one.
There you go.
There you go.
Tony Esposito and Dennis Savard.
Nice.
Pretty good.
I got a Kyle Calder.
Hey.
1/3 of that. Ooh, a Steve Passmore. You're
Oh,
jealous.
gotta give that to my wife.
Trade you for that Tony Esposito. Dominic Hasek.
Hey.
Of course, I get the Maple Leaf. Chris Chelios. And then a Bobby Hull. There you go.
Very cool.
Some good players there.
I got Steve McCarthy,
Oh, that's your.
yes.
That's your. Almost
Hit my wife with the
favorites.
puck.
Jeremy Roenick in the barber pole jersey.
Nice.
I like that. Bobby Hull. I got another Maple Leafs buffer. Kenny Warham. Got that one. And Phil Esposito.
There you go.
Enshrined.
Saw a jersey of his for sale for $30
Don't
here.
see too
Signed.
much Phil in the Blackhawks
No,
jersey.
no,
yeah.
not too much.
Eric, help me with that. How is there a Phil Esposito Bruins jersey for $30 signed here? How does that work?
I mean,
What's the
the
scam?
quality of the jersey is probably extremely low, and Yeah, that's probably about all I can say.
Yeah.
Might
It
not
did
be a
look-
real autograph.
It did not look great in terms of jersey quality, but it was authenticated. They had like the thing on there. This
Yeah,
is very
but
cool.
That's a good entry level collector
There you
jersey.
There you go.
Somebody just wants something that looks cool on your wall.
Your starter jersey.
Yeah.
All right, what'd you
Exactly.
get in your pack, Eric?
I got Igor Korolev. That's a blast.
Good old
from the
number
past.
22.
Yes.
Steve Sullivan, Howie Morenz,
26.
Stan Mikita, and Pierre Palat.
Nice.
All right.
Finish strong.
Solid pack.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think we did good. All right, let's
That's
go sell
awesome.
these.
Yeah.
Sweet. I look forward.
Set up a booth.
I look forward for the $3 I get for all this guy.
Perfect.
Eric, let people know where to find you, where to find the podcast.
Yeah, so Center Ice Cardcast. It's me and a co-host who lives up in Toronto. We talk cards and open boxes every now and then and show off cards that we've acquired. And we have contacts with Upper Deck and other manufacturers, so they'll give us like inside scoops on stuff and come on and talk about products and stuff. So yeah, we love doing it and love providing that content for people. So Center Ice Cardcast, you can watch on YouTube or any podcast platform pretty much. Social media, Center Ice Cardcast. Twitter is Center Ice CC. Yeah.
Awesome. Eric, it was great having you, man. We appreciate it.
And then one other kind of cool thing with that, like I said, they had their other groups that were recording from the show. And right before the Blackhawks podcast was their Cubs podcast. And I think each show kind of tried to have on somebody that could talk about collectibles and sports cards and things like that. So the person that they had on their Cubs show right before the Blackhawks show, some of you might know who this is. Many of you probably won't, and that's okay, is somebody that goes by 1 million Cubs cards on Twitter. And if you don't follow him, I would highly recommend that you do. He just has a really cool account. Obviously, as the name would indicate, he is on a mission to collect 1 million different Chicago Cubs cards. Or I shouldn't say different, just 1 million
That's
Chicago
awesome.
Cubs cards. Yeah, it really
And I do
is.
follow that guy. Like, I don't collect baseball, but as soon as I saw that Twitter handle, I'm like, that's cool. And then I heard about his quest for 1 million Cubs cards. And I'm like, I respect that. So maybe I'll do that one day with my collection. Probably not, but we'll
1
see.
million, 1 million Jonas Enroth cards.
I mean,
There probably aren't even 1 million Jonas Enroth cards in existence, actually.
don't tempt me, okay? We'll see. We'll see.
With the way Aaron can find like photo bombs of Enroth and like misprints and like,
Fair.
I feel like if anyone on planet Earth would do that with a player like Enroth, it's going to be Aaron.
I mean, again, don't tempt me. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Anyway, so Bo is his name, and he was on the Cubs podcast. And kind of before he jumped on, and before the Blackhawks show, obviously, we were kind of just sitting around, kind of waiting for our point in the shows to go on and everything. So we kind of just spent like 20, 30 minutes just talking about our collections. And like I said, I've followed him on Twitter for a few years at this point. So just being able to meet him and like actually kind of hear more about, why he has this mission, and, how he stores things, and, what his favorite card is, and, things like that was just a lot of fun, actually being able to have a conversation with someone like that rather than just seeing their tweets or, maybe tweeting back and forth a little bit. But just being able to sit down and have a conversation with him was really enjoyable, even though it had nothing to do with hockey. Was definitely really fun. And then the other kind of cool person that I got to meet that I definitely would not have had I not been on that show, not that it had anything specifically to do with the show, but it was really crazy. We're just kind of standing around. This is like 10 or 15 minutes before we were going to start recording their show. And we're kind of just standing there, and one of the guys looks over, and I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 tables down, he's like, "Is that Jaromir Jagr?" And we all kind of look over and we're like, "Yeah, that's Jaromir Jagr." So the 4 of us kind of scurry down there and introduce ourselves, and we got pictures with him and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, got to meet definitely one of the greatest of all time, and Jaromir Jagr. Didn't get an autograph or anything. I don't really like doing that. And he definitely wasn't really in the mood to be super social. He was there. He was partnering with a company to launch these banknotes of Wayne Gretzky, actually, which is kind of interesting in its own right. But he was there kind of just meeting with his team of representatives, just to talk about this and stuff. So it's not like he was, publicly there signing autographs or anything like that. He was kind of more there, in a business sense on that day. So didn't want to take too much of his time, but just figured go over, say hey, get a picture. Pretty fun experience for sure. Not every day that you just happen to run into one of the greatest hockey players of all time. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, getting back to the cards, obviously I talked about the Ovechkin, and then there were only a couple of other pickups for me the rest of that day. I did end up getting through the rest of that additional room, and that's where the CHGO Blackhawks show was. So that's kind of why I decided to just stay in that room for the day and just get through that and kind of make my life easier as opposed to running all over the convention center. So got through that. The Ovechkin was the only card that I actually got out of that entire hall, which was fine. But once I got done with that hall, then I was like, okay, I might as well kind of start picking through this in between hall, because I knew, by the time that it was in the afternoon, there was no point in really even trying to take on the main showroom at that point. So I figured, let me just start kind of picking my way through this middle hall since it's a lot smaller. And came across a table that had pretty much, I think it was all hockey, which for the National is very uncommon. I would say, Matt, and you can back me up on this, but I feel like throughout the course of the show, I saw maybe like 4 or 5 booths at the entire show that were just hockey. So whenever you find one of those, you spend time there because you're like, okay, these guys are the guys that I'm looking for. They've got a lot of hockey cards. Like, this is great. So I was kind of, just picking through. They had some really nice showcases, some of which I did put on our social media, but they also had some pretty good like mid-end type of boxes and then also a dollar box as well. So I was like, hey, I know this is all hockey. I'm going to take the time and just look through their stuff. Why not? And as I'm doing that, flipping through the dollar box, there's this guy standing next to me. And I had on one of my podcast shirts that day. And he was like, oh, like, are you a Center Ice Cardcast? And I was like, oh yeah. We kind of just were making small talk back and forth. But yeah, it's always fun, like when someone that you don't know who they are, says, oh, like, yeah, like I listened to your show, yada, yada, yada. So that was really cool. And, we're still kind of making small talk, flipping through the boxes and stuff. And eventually one of the booth owners comes over and is talking to this other guy. And through their conversation, I'm able to figure out that this is somebody that I had met on Facebook, not met, but like we had interacted before. And I knew who he was. So I introduced myself, and it was kind of funny. As soon as I said, what my name was, then him, another guy at the booth, and the guy that I was standing next to, like all immediately put together, like, oh, like that's who you are. So that was kind of fun, like kind of how you said, Matt, with, your experience at dinner, once you make that connection of who someone is, it's like, oh yeah, like I know who you are. So that was really fun. So the booth owners were Stefan Perot and Mitch Grotman, like you said. Obviously a lot of people would know who those guys are through social media. And then the guy who was standing next to me, who first initially, initiated the conversation, was Griffin Germond of Mainly Hockey Cards. So another guy that some of you might recognize there for sure. So shout out to the three of you if you're listening. It was a pleasure to meet you. But yeah, just really fun to, kind of put a face with the name and just kind of have a fun little conversation that way. And then just continuing to flip through the dollar box that Stefan had. He did have a couple of cards that fit my collection. The first one being from the newest Upper Deck Synergy, a Light Up the Night out of $8.99 of Jacob Slavin. So obviously not like a huge card by any means, a dollar card, but one that I needed. So I was happy about that.
It all counts.
That's right. And kind of, going into the show, like Matt said, I really don't want to have like any expectations, because if you do have really specific expectations, it's probably going to be easy to be disappointed. So, of course, going into it, it's like, hey, if I could find a Hjalmarsson I need, or a Slavin I need, or a Dzingel I need, that would be awesome. So, the fact that day one, boom, there's a Slavin I need, even if it's a really cheap card, great. I'm happy with that. Especially because cards out of these dollar bins, it's kind of the type of thing where it's like, okay, I could go buy this on eBay right now for $1, but then you're paying, $4 or $5 in shipping. So it's like, okay, I'm spending $5 or $6 on this $1 card. So I have a lot of those types of cards on my want list that I just haven't bothered picking up because it's not worth the price of shipping. So being able to find cards like that at a show for a fair price is awesome, because it's like, okay, I'm paying a fair price for this. I'm not way overpaying just to accommodate for shipping and stuff. So that was great. Unfortunately, he did not have just the generic red synergy card. I was kind of surprised because he had a lot. You could tell that he clearly had opened a lot of synergy because there were just endless amounts of the red parallels and the basic inserts and stuff like that in this dollar box. And one of those that I did find was the red of Marc-Andre Fleury, which obviously, yeah, I don't know who that is, but
that's a really nice card, actually. That
it
was
is.
so nice.
They're really sharp, especially with the head shot in that cutout there is really, really cool too. So
that is cool. Yeah,
I think it's their best synergy design.
So cool. I was just gonna say, like,
I would agree.
Like, really, really good. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Now we're showing some cards. Now this is great.
Yes.
Picking up to the next level.
Yes. So yeah, so I grabbed those two and was pretty happy. And that was pretty much the end of day one for me. It was getting right down to the point, I think it went until 6 o'clock every day. And this was probably at like 5:15 or 5:30 or something. So I was like, okay, like this is a good spot to just kind of leave off and kind of know where I'm at and, got a couple cards that I'm happy with. And so that was pretty cool. And then I guess one more, I guess technically it is a pickup from, that would not have happened if I didn't go to the National. So I will include it. But once we got back home, Matt had actually gotten this card from a friend of his and already had one. So he actually passed it along to me, that being the Upper Deck Canvas Program of Excellence of Fleury from 21-22 Upper Deck. So appreciate that, Matt. Thank you. Definitely a cool card.
Yeah, it worked out well. I'm glad that you didn't have a copy.
Yes. Yeah. They are really cool. Obviously, it shows him from the World Juniors with those iconic yellow pads and everything. And yeah, definitely a really cool card and was one that I had considered picking up in the past. So to be able to get one was really fun and obviously really appreciate that. Yeah, so that's my day one. I know I did a lot more talking than you did there, Matt, but we will switch over to day two, being Friday, and I will let you take it away.
Well, before I start, I want to say I could see Aaron appreciating the flurries. He's a goalie and he digs awesome setups, so it kind of checks both boxes there. But
big fan. And Canadians, that card just struck a chord with me a little bit. Big fan.
I mean, that kind of was set the tone because I saw more on Marc-Andre Fleury cards than I expected. I think I saw maybe a dozen decent cards, and yeah, it was really cool to have the chance to grab a couple for sure. But day two, I mean, there's just one main story I want to take away from day two. And we've talked about this, Eric, it was great to kind of debrief with you after each day, kind of recapping how it went. And obviously it was awesome that you were able to get some really cool cards after the way your morning started, because that was a bit of a letdown. But the second day, again, I kind of went in thinking, all right, I'm going to take time to meet up with my buddies and like really just take time to really hang out with a lot of people. And if I get through some boxes, I'll just kind of wander my way around to those places I haven't been yet. So as I'm doing that, as you talked about, there's that in-between room, right? And there was actually some good stuff in there. There's way better stuff in there than I would have anticipated. And there was a guy who had a lot of hockey on one side of his table. And I actually went there twice. So first day I went there and just kind of met up with some people and I'm like, oh, you got some nice hockey cards here, and didn't see any Marc-Andre Fleury cards or anything. So I went about my business, but I was like, I got to go back there. And something was telling me to go back there. And I mean, sometimes things just work out perfectly. I still can't believe this happened, but I go there and he's there talking to some people, and this guy probably in his mid 60s shows up and he's wheeling along a suitcase, not like a Pelican thing but just like a legit suitcase. I'm like, well, there's got to be something good in there. He's like, I got some hockey to sell. Are you interested? So I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, you got any Fleury? Because he's trying to work with the dealer, right? So he's having conversations, and he and the dealer or he showed him like a Henrik Lundqvist from the second year cup, excuse me. It was like a Quad Foundations patch auto, beautiful card. Like, wow, that's a really nice card, and all this and stuff. And he and I start chatting, and he's like, yeah, my son and I collect, which I think all three of us, like, great memories collecting with our family members. So at least with my dad, I have a lot of wonderful memories from that. So it was great to just talk with him. And then after we chatted a bit, you kind of build up some rapport. I said, I collect Marc-Andre Fleury. Dream come true for me, man. I've already found a couple of amazing cards. Any chance he got a Fleury? And there's like, I think we got one or two. So he's digging through there and he brings out a card. And I'm just like, Like, no way. Another one I haven't seen before, and it's a type of card I've never grabbed from Premier. So we're talking. He's like, let me wait for my son to get here. Let's see if we can work something out. And his son shows up, and I know you haven't mentioned this, but he's just sweating crazy because it's hot in that in between room. And everybody has been to the National has already talked about this, I'm sure. But boy, it was like a furnace in there. It was legit like 85 something degrees in there. It was the hottest day. It was awful. So we're kind of hanging in there, and he shows up, and you can tell he's a little bit kind of out of it. And we start chatting and kind of start talking about a price. And before he agreed on a price, like, again, I love the website idea. I got to give a big shout out to Aaron. He created his website, which is amazing. He motivated me to make mine. And so
Thanks,
I bring
man.
it, yeah, for sure, dude. I bring it up on my phone, and I'm like, here's my collection. Like, I can't show you all of it, but let me just prove to you, like, this isn't a flip deal. This is it going to me, and it's staying with me. And you can see his whole demeanor change. You get this big smile on his face. Came to a price, and here it is. It's a 1819 Premier Mega Patch out of 21, and just the detail on this edge over here is awesome. It's got all the three colors of the Vegas Golden Knights patch.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've never seen a mega patch in person, and I was really, really so stoked to even find one, because I wouldn't have had I not gone back to that table within 2 minutes of that and then asked if he had any flurry. So it was just a wonderful interaction. It's a great story. I'm definitely going to tell it more than a few times, just because fate sometimes has its way of working out for the better. And so, yeah, after that point, I'm like, all right, well, I can just go sit down and not really do much. I'm good. Like, so right about that time, Eric had texted me. He's like, hey, I've got this card in front of me, and it's not really what you would normally buy, but it's something that I think is pretty cool. And of course, he had been showing me all of his Leaf stuff, and I was kind of getting warmed up to the idea. He'd show me the Ovechkin, obviously, and then the night before, he'd show me the infamous Buckle. So I'm like warmed up to Leaf a little bit more at that point. And so he shows me this 6-way patch, like 2 tags and 4 patch cards of Fleury, Lundqvist, Crawford, Quick, Holtby, and Price. And I said, not really what I'm looking for, but it is really cool. And we're at the show. It's like you said, Eric, it's a show pickup. So I gave him a price. The guy accepted. I don't have it with me because it's all stored away, but I have a picture of it here if Aaron wants to see it. The Decade of Dominance. But I think it's great because this is an affordable way to get awesome patches and tags, and it fits in my collection a lot better than it probably used to, because Eric, again, kind of warmed me up to the idea of these cards being really cool. And again, if I saw that on eBay, I'd go right past it, because that's not something that's usually in my wheelhouse. But now that I have it and scanned it in and it's on the website, it looks awesome on there. And I'm like, all right, so this is pretty legit. So it was great that, we're communicating every day with what we're seeing. Do you need it? Do you not need it? Which is, I feel, is essential when you're going to a big card show, especially with one as big as the National now. So that's why we need to get to the expo with Aaron, Eric, so we three can cover as much ground as possible. Definitely. Anyway, so it was a great second day. And then to end the day, I mean, that's not card related, but Eric's been talking up this deep dish pizza, and boy, did it deliver. It was it was phenomenal. I wish I could somehow make some appear in front of me right now, but it was the best deep dish pizza I'd ever had. So props to you and your family for that one, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone knows, Chicago deep dish, whatever. And, people that have been to Chicago, from out of town have probably gotten it from, Giordano's or Lou Malnati's or Gino's East, or, kind of one of the more like chain type of places. And don't get me wrong, their pizza is really good. I mean, it's hard to screw up real deal deep dish pizza. They're all really good. But yeah, my family lives out in the suburbs, and for context, I don't think we'd mentioned this before, but Matt stayed with me at my parents' house out in the suburbs. So that's the context of all this. But there's this place like 5 minutes away from my parents' house out in the suburbs, just a total hole in the wall type of place that just has the best pizza you will ever have. So whenever my wife and I travel up to see my parents, like that's, non-negotiable, we're getting that pizza. So obviously knew that we would do that. And, being able to share that with you, I'm sure was one of the food highlights for you at least. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, going back to that, the 6-way, yeah, just like I think it's another good example of one of those types of cards that just seeing in person allows you to really appreciate it a lot more than if you're just seeing a picture of it online.
Oh, for sure. And then having people talk it up too. Like, I'm sure if Aaron was there and you were there, like the three of us, Aaron would have been like, dude, that's so sick. Because I
It
imagine,
is sick.
right? I mean, if Enroth is on that card and the other five goalies you just like, but you would never collect them, you're going to leave with that card, right? Like,
For sure.
that's so I think that it really fit the bill when it came to, what have you've called a show pickup, which, day three was all about that. So yeah, I definitely was way more convinced to have it, especially once I saw it. Once we met up and you're like, here it is, and I'm just like, dude, this is so cool. You actually thought that it was one you had seen 2 years ago. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yep. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I discovered later that it was a different card, but 2 years ago there was a very similar Leaf card. I think it might have been from Masked Men as well, or it might I don't remember what product it was, but it was a very similar type of card, like a 6 or 8 way memorabilia card that had Flurry on it. And at the time, I thought that it was literally the exact same card that I had seen 2 years ago. So I was like, oh man, like this is just so ironic. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. It was a different card. But yeah, I mean, just one of those cards that, with the quality of the memorabilia on there is just a fantastic card in person. And, I think that's the beauty of Leaf cards is you can get such nice quality cards and memorabilia pieces for much less than they would be if it was an upper deck card. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that you were willing to be open to that idea of adding that card. And obviously, yeah, great that you did, and that you're really enjoying and appreciating it now. So for my day two, I wasn't really sure when my cards that I'd submitted to tag would be done because I just decided to go ahead and do the end of show service. So theoretically, all that guarantees is that they'll be done by the end of the day on Sunday. So I was prepared, if need be, that I would go back to the show on Sunday, pick up the cards, and then just drive from there back home to Indiana. So that's kind of what I had in mind. Like, worst case, I was hopeful that they would be done sometime on Saturday. I felt like that was probably somewhat realistic, given that I submitted them Thursday morning, that they would be done by the end of Saturday felt fairly reasonable. So that's kind of what I had in mind. And then on Thursday night, actually, when I had gotten back home after eating dinner by myself instead of with my friend, I ended up kind of just hanging out with my parents and telling them about my day at the show and everything, and had kind of started explaining what tag grading is and how it's different from, Beckett and PSA and the other companies. And, they thought it was really interesting. And for those who aren't familiar with tag, please go online and look up and learn about their service because it really is just very unique and really interesting and very professional, very thorough. I've become very, very much impressed with everything that they do. So anyway, I was on their website and was going to pull up one of the grading reports of a random card just to show my parents kind of how it works and everything. And as I was doing that, I happened to be looking for a different parallel of one of the cards that I had submitted. And in the process, realized that my cards had actually been graded and were already done, which kind of then spoiled the surprise of what grades I got, which, that's not the end of the world. But of course, by seeing that, I knew they were done. So that's the first thing I went and did on Friday, was just went right to the tag booth, picked up my cards. So it was just the two cards, like I said, and I will show off at least on video so Aaron can see this. Obviously, you guys listening and watching won't be able to see this, but their presentation is really nice. They give you this like customized tag box and it's like all foiled out and everything. And just like, I was very impressed. I thought they would literally just like hand me the cards back. So the fact that the guy comes over and gives me this really nice box, I was like, okay, like that's pretty cool. Just very professional, very sleek, and everything. And then you open the box, and inside the box like explains how their entire system works and how you can go online and look at the grading report and all of that, and like has a QR code to show you like how their system works and everything. So again, just like super professional presentation, really, really impressive. And then inside the box is how they give you your cards back. And it's kind of hard to see, but they actually put them in packs. So you're basically like opening a pack of cards but it's just like your cards that come in these custom tag foil packs. So it's really just a beautiful presentation, really professional. Yeah, so I can't speak highly enough about Tag and the experience that I had with them, even though the grades I got were a little disappointing. I'll start with the very much disappointing one. This is a card that Aaron definitely already has seen and knows about the backstory with this.
I've seen some tag stuff at shows and it looks really cool. Like at the expo and they have their little display. Really awesome. Like I should probably get a card graded there at some point.
Yes, I would highly recommend doing that for sure.
And is it pretty like fair pricing? Like to get a card graded?
Yes.
They
So
like their day service or whatever it would be.
yes. So I think if you just do it through their website, and it's kind of hard to do it because you have to get in on one of their drops, and it's really hard to do that. But if you just go at a show that they're at, it's super easy. And I think I paid $30 each for the end of the show service. And based on, I was able to go back through my email and see when they actually completed my order. And I think from when I dropped the cards off until they were literally done and completely through the service was like literally 1 hour, which was amazing. And obviously, had I known that they were done, I would have picked them up on Thursday, but I didn't know until after the fact, so I just grabbed them Friday. But yeah, I mean, for $30, you're getting, really good protection, obviously, in the slab. You're getting just an incredibly detailed and thorough report of the condition of the card, which you do not get from any other grading company. That's one of the main things that really separates Tag is you can go online and you can see every single possible detail that you can imagine about why the card graded the way it did. And they break everything down on a 1,000 point scale. So they will analyze every corner, every edge, the surface, everything based on a 1,000 point scale. And even like for the corners and stuff, it breaks it down even farther than that. And, so you can say, this corner got a, 964, and this corner got a 972, and this corner unfortunately got a 912, stuff like that. You can see every single detail, and they also provide imaging of every single little defect and how that factors into the overall grade. So the overall process is truly remarkable, and I can't say enough good things about their service. And yeah, I've just been very impressed with them in every way. Unfortunately, like I said, this first card did not do very well. I knew that was possible, but I just wasn't super sure how their system would necessarily, pick up on this damage. But the first card being a 2015-16 Young Gun of Connor McDavid, which unfortunately got a 7 on their 1,000 point scale. It was a 713. This card was previously graded as a Beckett 8.5. And this was pretty much a perfect card, but when Beckett had it, they actually dropped it and damaged the top right corner of the front of the card. And that's kind of what dropped the grade from them, because otherwise it definitely would have been a gem mint, unfortunately. So I was like, okay, you know what? Like I'm not loving the fact that this is a Beckett 8.5 because that's kind of almost worse than the card just being raw. So I figured, why don't I crack it out, submit it to Tag, see what happens. It's kind of a good way to see how their service stacks up compared to other companies. And, this will just help me more thoroughly document the condition of this card. And unfortunately, on the back bottom left corner, there's kind of like, it's not even damage. It's just like a defect with the cardboard itself. And that was not factored into Beckett's grade, but the Tag system picked that corner apart. So I think that corner got like somewhere in like the 600s out of 1,000. So just because of this like defect with the cardboard, like I said, it's not damaged at all. The corner is sharp, like it's in good shape. It's just this like little, like not even wrinkle, but just like a weird little defect with the cardboard, and their system just picked it apart. So unfortunately, that's why it got the grade it did. Matt, you'll probably get a kick out of it, but you also totally believe me that it's still sitting unopened in the pack that it came in from Tag. Not sure that I will be opening that pack anytime soon because I know what's in there and I just don't really have any reason to open it. So maybe one day I might leave it. I might crack it out again. I don't know. We'll see. But so that was the first one. I was definitely kind of bummed because I figured if their system did not pick apart that defect, that it probably could have gotten a 9, which I would have been pretty happy with. And that's kind of what I was hoping for, expecting. kind of like that. So the fact that it ended up being a 7, I was just like, oh, like that's not ideal. So, oh well, it is what it is. But yeah, still glad that I went ahead and did it because, it's giving it that protection and it is thoroughly documenting the condition of the card. But the other card, and Aaron, you know nothing about this card. So you will be very surprised and interested
I
by this
will.
card.
More
And
surprised than I was, I bet.
Okay. All right. All right.
yeah, we are both expecting a good reaction to this card. This is a card that Matt had been aware of and had actually tried acquiring, but I ended up, I don't know if beating him out on it is the right word, but it ended up working out well. If you want to give the context of this, Matt.
Yeah, it was that thing where the guy would kept saying, "Well, I have a higher offer. Well, I have a higher offer." And Eric and I have talked, and you probably like this too. We don't play those games. Like, all right, like my price is my price. So it worked out great. The triple auto, as I've talked about a few times, the enshrinements with Labrador and Flurry came up 2 days later. So it worked out perfect that I didn't get it because I could get my like my number one most wanted forever card. So anyway, when he showed me this card prior to taking it to tag, I think he was expecting me to be like what or whatever, but I was actually really happy because I got to. Anyway, I'll let you show it.
Yeah. So obviously, hearing this, I'm sure that Aaron can probably put together that it is a Marc-Andre Fleury card. But this is a card that when I saw it available, it was just one that I knew I had to have. And again, kind of one that I figured that, submitting it to tag would just be a good way to not only really protect it well, but also document that condition. And also another thing with tag is they do just a really phenomenal job of imaging the cards after they've been slabbed. And I think it's very difficult to get good photos of a slabbed card. You can scan stuff and it looks good, but getting actual photographs of a slab can be really difficult. And they just have some extremely, extremely high quality camera that allows them to get really good imaging of their slabs. So that was even like almost worth the price of admission, so to speak, just to get really good quality images of this card. So I was excited about that. But anyway, enough build up. Aaron, I will just show you the card and then you can tell everybody what exactly you are looking at.
Oh, wow. Okay, here we go. So it's an awesome PMG gold card of Marc-Andre Fleury, obviously. So that is, wow. Where did that come from?
Came from EPAC, actually. I found it on EPAC and was able to get it.
That is amazing. Oh, that is so cool. That's awesome. Man, that must be like one of the coolest cards in your collection now.
It's definitely a cool one. I mean, like I said,
One of one, just so good.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least as of right now, it might be his top Blackhawks card, which is kind of why I really wanted to get a hold of it. Obviously, if he ends up having like
sure.
a cup shield or something, that's different. But yeah, just
That's
saw
a
it and
nice
knew I really wanted to have it for my collection, and it worked out. And yeah, just being able to now have it really
That's
thoroughly
nice.
protected and
Man,
everything.
that's awesome. I'm jealous. It's a great card.
That was so cool for me too, to be excited about a friend's addition to their collection, because I think sometimes in this hobby we get so caught up in like I want, and I've always, since I got into the hockey side of things, seeing the type of people, the way that Aaron, yourself, and many other collectors that we all follow on Instagram, it's not about them always. It's really more about everybody else. And so for me, I was like, this is awesome. I have an opportunity to see this card in person. What are the odds of that? Like, just totally would have never happened, honestly. So I found it as a big, honor to be able to see this card and hold it before it went to tag. And we kind of talked about what grade it might get. And it was really cool to see how that whole process worked. I mean, that was another great part about what Eric did. Not talking about the McDavid, but the Flurry, just to see how fast they did it, how efficient they were, the photography. And then Aaron, he sent me the link and we looked at this huge detailed report. I'm going through on my iPad. I'm like, this is amazingly detailed. Like there's no two ways about arguing the grade. It is what it is. So it sold me on tag, and it was just awesome to see the card and watch it go through that process.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because like, even though obviously the McDavid grade was disappointing, it's like you can't be mad at tag for that. It's just everything about their system is like the definition of objectivity. Like, whereas if you send it to Beckett or PSA or whatever, it's a human that's kind of fully determining what the grade would be. And maybe that person's having a good day, maybe they're having a bad day, and that grader is going to grade it differently than the next person, and the next person, and the next person. And even if you had the same person looking at it one day compared to another day, they might grade it differently. Whereas with tag, their claim is that if you submit the same card over and over and over, it's going to get the same grade over and over and over. So, yeah, obviously getting a 713 on the McDavid is disappointing, but it's like, well, that's just what it is. That's what the card is. You can't argue it. That's what it is. So, yeah, and like obviously with the Flurry being an 897, it's like, oh, it would have been really nice if that had been a 900 and gotten a 9, but it is what it is. The grade wasn't a big deal to me. It was more just about getting the information, getting the imagery, that type of stuff. So yeah, definitely very happy with that experience. And yeah, definitely, like I said earlier, cannot recommend them enough. And I know, Matt, you even said that, you might want to go ahead and submit stuff to them one day too.
Yes, actually, a friend of mine, Rob, who's Zomdos Collectibles on Instagram, he and his friend are going to do a submission and said, hey, I got a couple spots open, so I'm sitting here, wheels turning. I'm going to throw it to Aaron real quick. Aaron, of all the Flurry rookies that are out there, and they don't do acetate, so the ice rookie is out, unfortunately. I really wanted to grade that, but what would be like the first card you guys would probably choose for Flurry to grade?
Of his rookies?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a random one. SB Game Used. That card in general just doesn't get talked about enough. So why not throw it in a holder?
That was my second choice, believe it or not.
Interesting.
After the ice. So ice was first, and then I had one that I was like, yeah, this one should be graded because it's decent. At least I think it's decent. And then, yeah, the SB Game Used. And then Eric already knows the one that I said right off the top of my head. I mean, when I bought it, I thought this is a PSA 9, but then now that we know an 8.5 Beckett, it's a 7 in tag. And because of the corner, part of me is like, well, what if it comes back like a 7? But it's his Young Guns. I have a really, really good looking copy. I've looked at it really close. I know it's not a 10 PSA, unless maybe like Eric said, somebody's having a good day. But I would really like to see that card in a tag slab. The slabs are just absolutely stunning in person. And we were online, right? And we're like, oh, these look great. But to have that one booth, that's just a promo booth with like all these random slabs. Of course, they've got these beautiful Marvel shiny cards and all this in there. I was like, okay, this is perfect. So yeah, those are going to be the two that I think he said he might have 3 spots, but yeah, SP Game Used, and then the Young Guns, and then I have to decide on a third. I was thinking like, oh, do I cross my green PMG over? But I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Like it's a BGS 8. I think we know what that means, so probably not a good idea.
I think I might go ahead and submit something to tag at the expo if they're there.
Do it.
Why not? Just for my collection, just whatever. Why not?
Yeah.
What's the first one that you're thinking?
What's the first one I'm thinking?
Got to be an Enroth Young Gun.
Well, I was thinking, the Young Gun, because I have a couple other slabbed copies, so why not add to the collection there? But maybe something random. Who knows?
Nice. It'd be interesting to see what you come up with, because you're going to be completely impressed by the whole process there. And it was cool. Eric actually opened. We already knew the grade, right, Eric? We already knew the grade, but to watch him open the box for the first time and see his genuine, you could tell he was bummed about the 897. But then when he saw the presentation and he opened it and we looked at the slab together, it kind of brought the spirits back up. I'm like, okay, this is pretty darn cool, because no other card will look that good in a slab, especially with shine to it. So I'm sold on them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And another cool thing, if you guys aren't familiar with them, but obviously most other companies with their slabs, where they put the information about the card is on a piece of paper that they then embed into the slab. Whereas with tag, it's literally just etched into the plastic. So it just gives it, a really clean look. And another obviously great thing is they have that QR code on the slab itself that if you scan it with your phone, it takes you straight to that online report of the condition of the card. So, I mean, it's just super quick and easy. At any time that you have that card, you can immediately pull up that information. And, like you were saying, Matt, it's open to anybody. Anybody can go on the tag website right now, look for the Marc-Andre Fleury Gold PMG, and you can find that report and see everything that's wrong with the card. You can see the measurements of the card, everything that you can imagine about the card you can go on there and see it literally right now. So yeah, it's a very, very impressive system that they have, and I'm very glad that I did go ahead and do it, even if the grades weren't quite as good as I hoped for. Definitely very pleased that I did that, and I would say that that was definitely one of the more positive experiences for me at the show for sure. So yeah, definitely want to give Tag their their justice there for sure. So, but yeah, getting back into other cards now. Um, Going back to Thursday, actually, how I'd showed that Flurry Synergy card, Stefan actually had 2 copies of that card, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just because I was exhausted at that point in the day or whatever it was, I didn't think of texting Matt to see if he actually needed that card. I think it was just like, oh, it's a super cheap card, he probably already has it. Didn't think much of it. And so we're back at my parents' house that night debriefing, and I show him, and he's like, oh man, like I don't have that card, like that's awesome. And I was like, oh, like, well, they have a second one, or at least they did. So, maybe they'll still have it tomorrow. So after I picked up my cards from Tag on Friday, I immediately just booked it over to Stefan's booth to see if he still had it. And there was someone picking through the dollar box when I got there. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to stand here and wait. And, however long it ends up taking, I'm going to wait it out and see if they still have it. And incredibly ironic how it worked out. Literally, this is whatever, a 4-row box of cards or whatever. And literally where this guy left off on the last row, there's the Flurry. So I'm like, wow, like this is amazing. So I grab it, say, hey, Stefan, here's $1. Thanks. Good to see you again. And then, we ended up texting to figure out where each other were. And I'll throw it back over to you actually at this point, because you were over at the Upper Deck booth meeting someone that you had been really looking forward to get to meet in person.
Yes. Well, first of all, I mean, just what you said about going right away to look for the Flurry, I mean, that says a lot about like how important the friendship aspect is when you get to go to these shows with your buddies, because you got people looking out for you. Had I seen a really cool Enroth, I think we saw, Eric, you had seen one the first day, right? And you had texted Aaron. He's like, oh, this is the best card on the show. You got to buy it right now. And
got to get it, man. That's surprising, actually. Very, very surprising. But anyway, carry on.
I was hoping that I would come across it, because I think I own one rookie of his, and I don't own the one that he found. I was like, yeah, that would be kind of like a cool like representation of a friendship. But yeah, so anyway, I just want to say thanks again for that. That was so cool to have both of us looking out for each other and everyone else, obviously. But for me, it was really cool because Jean Arena, who is I don't know, I can't say it yet, but anyway, she works for Upper Deck, and I had interviewed her years ago about her 90s baseball designs, especially Metal Universe, some of the more popular designs with the Marvel influences. I mean, I grew up with that set and I love it to death. And so I got a hold of her, and she said, yeah, I'm just hanging out Upper Deck. And I got over there, and I'm like, it's so cool for me. So I sit down, and we just were chatting, and one person did come over and just tell her, thank you. I love what you're doing, and thank you for everything. And I just got to talking with her, and somehow we came to Ultra. Everybody is if you're a hockey collector, you're pretty aware of the new Ultra release that was EPAC only. Boy, do those designs look absolutely amazing. And I didn't know it at the time, but of course, I'm talking about the inserts, and I get to the meteor shower. I'm like, this card is amazing. And she goes, yeah, I designed that. I'm like, I should have guessed. Like, of course you did. Like, had her hand in on it. And you start looking through all those inserts in there, and you go, it's like a Fleer influence from the 90s. These designs are so 90s, and it's no wonder everybody loves them so much, because everybody loves those designs from back then. So it was awesome to talk to her. And then Eric made his way over, and he got to meet her there for a few minutes too, which she's going to be doing some great things in the future. That's all I could say. But yeah, it was wonderful. I got to meet her, and Eric took my picture with her, and that was a big highlight for me after the fact of getting that awesome Marc-Andre Fleury card. I'm like, geez, this keeps getting better and better. So that was pretty cool. And then I guess I'll throw it back to you, Eric, and Aaron, you'll like this probably the last part, what we got to kind of end our day with, because we were kind of feeling it by about 4. I'm like, are you starting to feel ready to go? Because I'm starting to get to that point. Because I think you said, hey, come meet me at Upper Deck. And I was like, this ought to be good.
Yeah, so after meeting with Gene, we kind of decided to go our own separate ways for most of the rest of the day, because obviously on Thursday I had been in that additional hall, you had been in the main hall. So we're like, let's, kind of switch now and, kind of pick up where we left off, because it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense for me to either go through the first one or for you to go through the main one again. So it was like, hey, like let's just pick up where we left off and keep going at it, and we'll see what we find. But yeah, I'll get back to my rest of the pickups for the day, and I'll jump forward to what you were alluding to. So kind of throughout the course of the day, I knew that our good buddy Billy Celio from Upper Deck was going to be at the show, and obviously, knew I wanted to meet up with him. Aaron, I know you've met him at the expo, but I had not gotten a chance to meet him in person yet. So definitely knew that wanted to do that. And, we had messaged back and forth about, hey, when are you going to be there? We got to make sure we meet up and stuff like that. And kind of throughout the course of the day, I kind of wandered past the Upper Deck booth a few times just to see if he was happened to be around, because as you know, Aaron, at shows, he will be walking the floor and talking to vendors and retailers and getting feedback, about products and stuff like that. So, it's not just that he's hanging around to talk to people. It's like he's really still like doing his job, trying to gather a lot of feedback so that he can, be putting that feedback right back into the products that he's building. So I knew it might be a little bit difficult. Obviously, worst came to worst, we could have, messaged each other and just set a time to meet. But yeah, kind of just kept wandering past their booth from time to time. And fortunately, at one point, I was wandering kind of through the Upper Deck booth almost, and then he kind of just came walking around the corner, and I was like, "Hey, like there you are! Like nice to meet you." So at that point, we kind of talked for probably like I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, like Matt really wants to meet Billy too," and talk for a few minutes. So I text Matt, and I'm like, "Hey, like get over to the Upper Deck booth right now." And of course, you were like on the other side of the whole convention center. So it took you a little while to get there, but finally, you were able to make your way over there, and Billy was obviously very gracious with his time, and was willing to wait for you to come over and have a conversation with you too.
Oh yeah, and of course he started out with some humor. He's like something along the lines of, "I've got these great designs I'm excited to talk about, and don't worry, like Marc-Andre Fleury won't have any," or something like that. He was hamming it up. It was great, but he was, he was really busy, and I was really happy he took the time to not only talk to us, but he got me excited about a couple of releases coming out, and it was great to see his enthusiasm for what he's doing. I know you guys have had him on here multiple times, and to also talk to him in person and just see that excitement for products that are coming out. I just feel a little more vested in him already. The next Allura that's coming out, he's talked about it, as well as a couple others, and he talked about this one specific insert that I'm so excited for everybody out there to see, regardless if Fleury is in it or not. I will be like, oh, I need to make sure I find a copy of this. This is pretty special. So it was the perfect way to end the day for me. I don't know about you, Eric, but and Aaron, you've met him. He's just such a nice guy in person. Yeah.
Great guy.
Did it make you more excited when you met him, like about more Upper Deck stuff after you got done talking to him?
I think so. I mean, for me, it was just more like putting not so much a face to the name, but, obviously we've had him on the podcast a bunch of times, but just, meeting him and, especially someone who has been on the podcast so much, it's good to meet, a guy like that. So I'm sure Billy, if he's listening, we did get a kick out of that, but just a all around awesome dude. And it was so great to meet him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that one insert that it'll be in the next Allure. So I guess it's 22-23 Allure, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we can't really spill any beans on it, but you guys will know it when you see it. I'll put it that way. It will jump out and you will be like, whoa, like that's pretty cool. So yeah, it was really cool hearing about that and kind of getting some of that behind the scenes stuff that not many people, know about this far ahead of time. So always appreciate those little tidbits from Billy, whether it's on the show or just through Facebook or in person or whatever it might be. So yeah, that was fun. But getting back, I'll go through the rest of my pickups from the day. After we split, after hanging out with Gene for a little bit, I was like, okay, now I'm in the main showroom. So I'm going to go all the way to the front corner and start weaving my way through the aisles. And probably like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 booths in is where that Decade of Dominance card was that you ended up picking up. And it was kind of funny even too. I remember like I sent you the picture and you were kind of like on the fence about it and we were texting back and forth and I had moved on. I had gone, continued looking. And then you came around to it and were like, well, if they would take this, like, go ahead. So I went back and negotiated it and got it and everything. But just kind of funny how that worked out. But after, a few booths down from there was a booth that had a lot of hockey dollar boxes. And at this point, I'm like, okay, like I might as well start flipping through. And, you can kind of tell when you're flipping through a dollar box if there's going to be something that you might like or not. Like you can tell if it's just a bunch of junk or if it's, somewhat interesting. So I could tell that, this was newer stuff. So I was like, maybe there's a Slavin or a Hjalmarsson I need. So I'll take a look. And I was flipping through and found a few pretty cool Marc-Andre Fleury cards. And I think there were probably like 3 or 4 different ones, and I was texting you to see if you needed them after I had learned that I should be doing that based on the Synergy one. But fortunately, these were all ones you already had. So I was able to pick out a couple pretty cool ones for myself. The first one being from 2022-23 Tim Hortons. It's one of the hockey triumphs that is celebrating his 500th win.
Solid.
Yep. So, of course, that being a cool piece of hockey history, and of course, being with the Blackhawks, pretty cool card for me to get. So I was happy about that one. And then the other one, just an awesome photo on this card from 22-23 Upper Deck. It's a UD canvas. And again, just a really cool picture of him just with a huge smile right at the camera. So fully shows off who Fleury is. Pretty cool card.
I will never, ever get tired of that picture, those types of pictures of him on cards. I hope they keep doing it after he retires, right? Be
yes.
The best.
Absolutely. So yeah, even though they're just, cheap cards, it's still really cool to get stuff like that. Just fun things like, would I have gotten around to picking those up on ComC or on eBay? Maybe. But, the fact that you see them in person, it's like, yep, I'm just going to grab them. And you had mentioned this too, and I think this is a good point to share about this, but you had kind of made the joke, but also, very true as well of, Eric, you had Fleury on your mind more, since I'm here, as opposed to if you had just gone on your own, which I think is definitely true. It's easy when you're with somebody else that collects a certain player, kind of have that player on the forefront of your mind. And, obviously Fleury being someone that I really like too, I probably was thinking more, about cards like this than I might have otherwise. So definitely kind of a cool connection there. And then moving on, another booth shortly thereafter that had just a huge spread of dollar boxes of all sports. But the guy had a 2020-21 Parkhurst Silver Parallel of Jacob Slavin, which I still needed for my collection. So that was another one of those great pickups where I had one sitting on my eBay watch list for years, but didn't want to spend $5 or $6 for it. Got it for $1. Absolutely thrilled. So that was great. Then moving to kind of one of the most interesting deals of the weekend for me, I would say. I was at this booth that was one of the ones that was like a hockey booth. This guy had, I think, like probably 3 different showcases full of really nice hockey cards, like Gretzky autos, Gordie Howe autos, Bobby Orr autos, like had some Fleury rookie stuff, Bergeron rookie stuff, like all kinds of really nice stuff. And then he also did have kind of some cheaper dollar type boxes. And so I was flipping through those. And he actually did have a couple cards that I needed for my 0304 project, which again, the fact that I was able to add for that project, I'm thrilled with. 2 cards from the 0304 Be a Player Ultimate Memorabilia set being the Matthew Lombardi and John Michael Lyles auto rookie cards out of 100. So obviously was very happy to grab those. And I had set those aside and was going to pay him. And then I'm kind of thinking, at every show, I usually bring some cards that I, can use as traders if need be or whatever. And I was kind of sitting there thinking about, I have a couple cards that based on what he has in his showcase, he might be interested in. So I, say, hey, are you, looking to buy stuff? And he said, sure, I'll take a look at what you got. So I pull out these cards and can tell like he's immediately like pretty interested in them. It was kind of funny. He wanted to like very thoroughly look at them. So he was like, can I take them out of the one touches and like really look closely at them and everything? And I was like, sure, like no problem. So after a few minutes of him kind of like scouring the cards and everything, he's like, well, what did you have in mind for him? And I threw out a price that, I was kind of aiming a little bit high, knowing that I'm sure there would be some negotiating back and forth. And he was like, well, can you get any closer to this number? And at that point, I'm like, yeah, I know we're going to make a deal because what he had thrown out was like even higher than what my minimum price would have been. So, I knew something would work out, and we ended up finding a middle ground from there. So I was thrilled with the amount that I got. He was really happy with the cards that he got. The better of the two was a card that he told me he was just going to keep in his personal collection. So it was cool to know that he was actually really appreciating the cards and not just wanting to immediately turn around and sell them. But what was cool too, since that was definitely a bigger dollar sale and ended up being 375 US for two cards. And, as a result of that, we're kind of talking about that. Well, I still had, these two cards kind of sitting on the table, and he was just like, oh, like, just take them. Like, it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of this deal. So yeah, to get two cards for my set there for free, obviously was great. And I was very happy about that sale. Obviously, getting more than I even, could have imagined getting, especially from a dealer at a show. I was very happy with that. And yeah, so that was definitely a highlight of the show, to, something to just feel really good about and be happy about. And then probably one of my favorite stories from throughout the weekend, that booth was like very nearby to the, what Matt and I called the Pittsburgh booth. The guy that had the Flurry jersey and those two really nice Flurry cards that you got. It was a dealer from Pittsburgh who sells off a bunch of the Penguins game worn jerseys and locker room nameplates and stuff like that. So we just referred to him as the Pittsburgh booth throughout the course of the show. So I knew that I wanted to get over there and see what he had. So I went over there, and there was this little kid that was at his booth talking with him. And I was kind of just looking around at what cards he had, and they had a handful of cards out on the table that they were talking about. I couldn't tell if the kid was trying to buy or sell them. I wasn't paying too much attention, but I could at least see the cards that they were talking about. And there was one card I was like, that's a pretty cool card. Like, I wonder what ends up happening. And so I was like, oh, whatever. The vendor didn't have anything in his showcase at the time that was overly interesting to me. So I was like, oh, like I'll move on, and maybe I come back later and see if he has anything else, whatever. So then probably like a half an hour later, I come back and I'm like, I wonder, whatever happened with that card. I kind of figured it was the vendors, and that, maybe the kid didn't end up buying it. Maybe the guy still has it. Maybe I can get it. So I go back like a half an hour later. The kid is still there. They're still talking, trying to work out this deal, which I thought was just hilarious, because it's like, oh, like how long does it really take to hash out, a 5 or 6 card deal, right? So I just kind of thought that was funny. So, this card is still sitting out there. So I'm like, I might as well just stick around and kind of see what happens here. So at this point, I can tell that the kid is trying to sell to the vendor. And so I'm kind of hanging around for a few minutes, and then it becomes apparent that they're not making a deal. So the kid starts putting his cards back in his box. And I kind of lean over to the dad, and I'm like, hey, like, do you know what he wants for that card? And the kid kind of overhears me say this, and gets interested, and we start talking. And I was like, hey, what do you have in mind for it? And he's not super sure. And the vendor was really helpful and polite and everything, and he said, hey, like, it's a $30 or $40 card, like that's what it is, that's what a fair price is, that's what they sell for. So I was like, okay, like, what do you want to do? And he's on his phone trying to pull up sales and stuff like that, which, hey, I got to respect that. Like, we've all been there. Like, I had no problem with that whatsoever. I thought it was pretty fun. So I was just letting him do his thing, because we've all been there. And it's a learning experience for him. And I was like, hey, like, I'll let him do his thing. And then a few minutes later, the vendor is like, yeah, like, it's a $30 or $40 card, like that's what it is. And so I'm like, okay, like, what do you say, like, let's split it at 35? And the kid, like, is still like trying to find sales and stuff, which is kind of funny. And the dad at this point is like, come on, like, that's a fair offer, take it, let's go, like, come on, like, don't be ridiculous. And again, I'm like, it's fine, like, I respect it, like, he wants to do his due diligence, and I got no problem with that, that's fine. And after like another 30 seconds or so, the kid's like, okay, fine, like, let's do it, $35 works. And I know I haven't said the card, so I'll show it off now, but it's from 2019-20 Chronology, and it's one of the Diamond Relic cards, and it's actually number 1 out of 36, so a cool added bonus of Marc-Andre Fleury.
I'm a big fan of Chronology, so that is an awesome card. Big fan of the whole thing. That is awesome. Really cool.
And it's so well centered
Well
too. I mean, I think, Aaron, you guys might have talked about Chronology a bit. Some of those cards can
we have.
be drastically off center. So that one is like spot on perfect.
Yes. Yeah, good observation. They were kind of cards like even when they first came out, I was like, it'd be cool to have one of those. Michel Goulet actually was in the Legends version of the product, and he has one of those. So I had always kind of considered getting one of his, but just had never gotten around to it. So, the fact that it was a nice flurry card and which kind of goes back to what we were saying too. Like he's more on the forefront of my mind, that Matt's there, and it's from this set that I have always kind of thought was cool, and being able to work out a deal with a kid, it just made for a really cool pickup and a really nice story. So that was definitely a cool highlight for me. And then fast forward, I continued working my way through all kinds of aisles, and it was a little while until I found this card, but just saw this in a booth that had very little hockey. It was mostly other stuff, but he did have a few hockey cards, and I caught this one out of the corner of my eye, and it was priced, I would say, fair to slightly cheap. So I was like, okay, I can probably get this for even less. So I was negotiating back and forth with the guy, and we ended up I ended up paying $45 for it. And it was kind of fun when we were driving back to my parents' house after the show. I was telling Matt about this purchase and just said, hey, I got a really good deal on an autograph card of a really good player. I paid $45 for it. And I had him just start throwing out names. Who do you think it is? For $45 that I feel this is a good deal, who do you think it's of? So you started throwing out, like Mike Bossy and like Guy Lafleur and guys like that. And I'm like, you're not even in the right. You're nowhere close.
Jonas Enro.
I skipped him. Sorry, man. He's beyond where I would have even
just
thought,
beyond.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would have been the steal of a lifetime. But no, so then we finally came back to it being a goalie. And Matt's like, okay, I don't know, like Grant Fuhr, and you start throwing out guys like that. Like they're all good guesses. But I'm like, you gotta, like, you're nowhere close. You're nowhere close. And he starts throwing out like, I don't like better than those guys. And I'm like, yep. He's like, I don't know. Like, and you start throwing out some other names. And I'm like, nope. Like, you're not even close. Like, you're still nowhere close. And I'm like, I'll give you a hint. Just go all the way to the top. And Aaron, what was the name that you just said?
I guessed Patrick Waugh.
And you would be correct.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so good. Oh, look at that. Man, I've always wanted a card. Oh, that's the Vault version too.
Yes.
See, that's the thing that I love about Vault. You never know what you can find. I know people have their, opinions about the product, but me, I like it for moments like those when you can get a card, a little cheaper than what, a normal card of his would go for. But I mean, it's just as good.
Yeah. So obviously being a Vault version, that's why it was, quote unquote, as cheap as it was. But even then, I think this card, or I know a different year from Signature Series of the Vault autographs sold recently for like $70. So I was like, okay, yeah, like for $45, like
Still
that's
cheap.
a no-brainer. So I was pretty happy with that. And like, again, like that's very much just like a random pickup. That's like, if I see that on eBay, I'm not grabbing it. But if you see it for $45 in a show, you're grabbing it. So yeah, I was definitely really happy about that one. Can't go wrong with a hard signed Patrick Waugh autograph for $45. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, then that kind of brings us back full circle to where we then met up with Billy. And then after that, we're like kind of just like done for the day. And we're like, okay, like let's go home. Let's get some pizza. We're worn out. And as we're walking out, we happened upon another one of those like only hockey booths. And it was Sal from the Puck Junk podcast. Some of you guys might be familiar with him. And yeah, so we were like, hey, like let's just pick through some of his dollar boxes, see if there's anything. And what's really nice about his booth is he had everything broken down into like by player and everything. So you could just immediately say, oh, here are the Fleury cards. Let's dig through those. Here are the Hjalmarsson cards. Let's dig through those. So, I mean, how awesome is that the two of us walk up to a booth, there's a Fleury section, there's a Hjalmarsson section. That's the only booth that's like that at the whole place. I guarantee you that. So, yeah, I ended up coming. Did you get anything from him? I think you did.
Yeah, I found an 0910 O-Pee-Chee base Fleury,
Okay.
which the only time it shows up on ComC, it's like $3 or $4 or $5. So that was perfect for $1.
Yeah. So you got something, you were happy. And then in the Hjalmarsson section, he had the 21-22 O-Pee-Chee red parallel, which again, you can find it on eBay, but to get it for $2 from him, perfect. And then in the Flurry section, he actually had one of the 21-22 Synergy red bounty parallels of Flurry pictured with the Blackhawks.
Nice.
So again, no-brainer pickup for me. So to get those two for $5, I was pretty happy with that. Obviously, that was a really great way to end Friday, picking up a few cheaper cards for our collections. We weren't even planning on stopping at the booth, but kind of just ran right into it, and boom, there cards were guys right in our face. So really great way to end the day, and then head off back home to have some pizza. But yeah, I will turn it over to you, and you can walk through your Saturday.
Well, Saturday we basically kind of hung out for the first 2 hours of the day. I wasn't planning on meeting my buddy Rob later because we were going to look to buy a box each and leave with it, which I did at the end of the show. I bought a Star Wars box. But my goal on day 3 was to just look through as many boxes as I could. I had basically seen all the showcases. You had basically seen them all, maybe a couple we missed. But like you said, there's all these graded ones. I just go right past them unless I see hockey. So we went to that back corner on the red carpet, which is where a lot of good stuff usually is always. And we went back there and we just, of course, Eric held me accountable. We started on the end and just kind of weaved our way back and forth. And, that can be difficult because the ends of those rows, there's a middle section, right? So you have to kind of look at half of it. Anyway, so as we're going through there, I was like, there's a couple of cool cards I thought I'd like to pick up before I left, like a nice goalie card, maybe a rookie card of a player that I enjoy watching. And I knew there was going to be a ton of Kobe Bryant cards there. And I did find a really nice Topps gold label Kobe Bryant card, perfect for putting on display, nice $20 purchase. And Eric goes, well, dude, it came in a one touch. So that you basically paid for the card right there. But, so I got a beautiful card, and I was moving along, and the first hockey card I bought, and of course, with Fleury being on Minnesota, I have followed that team, fortunately or unfortunately, however you like to look at that. But I like Matt Boldy. He's an American player. He's a good goal scorer. He's pretty streaky, but man, when he's hot, he's one of the best goal scorers in the league. So I found his Artifacts Acetate rookie card, and I'm sure you're seeing the scan now, but it's just the foil on it is beautiful. Acetate cards are exciting for me. I've always loved them. So that was a really easy buy at $20. I think he's got a lot of talent, loads of talent. And so Eric was with me when I grabbed that. He's like, oh, that's a great price, man. That's easy buy for sure. And we kept working our way around. And in one of the booths, I found a goalie auto. And didn't you basically say, Eric, if I was looking for a goalie auto, that I would have probably grabbed that one too, because it was such a good price. It was a half off box. Right? That's right.
Yep.
Okay. So we're looking through, and I like Exquisite. I think everybody that's a hockey collector likes their designs. Upper Deck does an amazing job with their Exquisite cards. And a goalie that I remember collecting when I was a kid in the 90s is Kirk McLean, and I found a really nice Exquisite auto for $20 of Kirk McLean, and I felt like that was an easy buy. So, Aaron, you being a goalie fan, I know that you probably appreciate, getting an auto from a great goaltender from that era as well.
Oh, yeah. Captain Kirk. Guy's a legend. I don't remember it, but the Stack the Pad save he made is, of course, just burned into the memory of all Canucks fans. So what a great pickup. And, of course, the brand, you mentioned is just awesome, and they always produce really nice cards within that series there. So, yeah, amazing. It's so exquisite.
Had to do it. Yeah, I love it. But that was just a really good way. Eric and I didn't get there. Well, we did actually get there early because we wanted to leave earlier than we did the last 2 nights. So we kind of, at least for me, I just wanted to look through some boxes, and I knew I'd be ready to go at 2 or something. So that was just my plan. We covered that entire section in about an hour and a half. Saw some really good stuff, obviously, and found a couple of great cards for the PC. And then another, I forgot because I know I scanned it for the podcast here, but help me out with the name, Eric. His first name is Mark, and he played for the Predators. Is it Milanchek? If I said it right?
Marek Mazanik or Mazanich.
Oh, Marek.
Yeah.
Marek Mazanich. Thank you so much. But Prism Silvers are some of the most beautiful cards Panini ever made, and it was in a dollar bin. So to find a rookie Prism Silver of his for $1, that was the last card I bought. It was perfect. So great way to end the show, and left and opened a box of non-hockey cards. But my buddy Rob opened a couple boxes. He opened a box of Ice, and he opened a box of O-Pee-Chee Platinum. And just to summarize, he hit a Quinn Hughes, the little helmet autographs that they have in there. He hit a Quinn Hughes, which that was
Nice.
awesome to see. And then he hit an Emerald Surge of Eric Carlson, which that's kind of a big card now. So I got to see an Emerald Surge get pulled. I got to see a Cosmic, and the autograph wasn't. I think it was a purple, or excuse me, a Violet Pixel auto of somebody I hadn't heard of. But it was fun. It was fun. I don't open wax, so it was really fun to watch some hockey get open. So yeah, overall, it was a very good day.
Nice. I would say that just based on hearing that he did pretty well for those 2 boxes. I would be happy if I was in his shoes.
I mean, he did better than about, I don't know, probably 85% of most people that open boxes. And so I was very happy for him. And he also got a couple cards graded. I forgot to mention that. He got a Carter Hart orange checkers graded, and it came back a 10. So that was really cool to see. I was very happy for him for that. And his other card got a lower grade than he wanted, but he got a 10 on the Carter Hart. So could kind of roll with that.
Nice. And the Kirk McLean reminded me that you picked up another exquisite card earlier in the show.
Oh my gosh, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, that's right. I don't have my scans in front of me, but yeah, I mentioned I thought it'd be cool to get a Spencer Knight card. I knew it'd be cheap. His prices are way down right now. He's another American player, American goaltender, still really young, and I'm really hoping that he gets his game back together. But yeah, you found me an exquisite silver rookie out of 299. Gosh, that card is just so beautiful. It's gorgeous. So because of that, I ended up getting a nice premiere out of 799, like a green, I think it was. But it was cool to come away with just a few goalie cards. I put them in my binder, my goalie binder, and they look awesome. Yeah, thanks again for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Aaron can appreciate the quote unquote random goalie pickups.
Oh, 100%.
Cool. So yeah, for my Saturday, having already pretty much gone through all of the booths, obviously, like you said, there was that back red carpet area that I hadn't gotten through, but knew that would be very easy to get through and not a whole lot of time. So kind of knowing that, obviously that was the main, primary focus was let's get through that. And then after that, if I want to circle back anywhere else, great. Yeah, I did not buy anything from that back area, but kind of funny. One of the only hockey booths that was at the show was a guy that had a bunch of like higher end cup patch autos, like limited logos and signature patches and stuff like that. That was pretty much like one entire showcase. And then he had another showcase of just like literally all young guns, like every young gun from the last, however many years, if you can think of it, it was there. And then he had another showcase that was kind of just like quote unquote more random, but still nice, like autographs and stuff like that. And we kind of stopped at that booth on the way back to the red carpet area, and we were kind of just looking through that stuff. And we're just standing there, and I'm sure you'll remember this as I say it, Matt, but we're standing there kind of just looking in the showcase, and then the vendor is like, "Oh, hey, Matt." And you're like, "Oh, like, is he talking to me? Like, hey, like, what?" And he's like, "Oh, no, sorry, like, not you, like the guy next to you." And you're like, "Oh, okay, like, whatever, because my name's Matt too. Like, I didn't know if you were talking to me or whatever." And, so we didn't really think much of it. And then for whatever reason, I was like, wait a minute. So I look over, and I've referenced him before on the show, but it was my cousin. I call him my cousin. He's my dad's cousin's son-in-law. So I just call him my cousin to make it easier. But he was standing right there at the show looking through this showcase and talking to this vendor. So I'm like, "Oh, hey, like, I haven't seen you in a few years. Like, how are you?" So that was kind of funny because even my parents were like, "Oh, I wonder if Matt's going to be there. Like, have you talked to him? Whatever." And boom, just completely unannounced, literally like run right into him pretty much. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, so then we were going back through the that red carpet area, and I didn't find anything for myself, but I did find there was a booth that had kind of like, they weren't necessarily all dollar boxes, but kind of just like cheaper hockey stuff. They had them for all sports, but obviously we were looking through the hockey, and the guy had probably like 30-ish different Leaf printing plates. So I was like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. I'll flip through those." And there was one of Clint Benedict from an old In the Game Used vintage memorabilia set. And I know that our buddy Kurt Johnson collects some of those depending on who the player is and what the set is and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, like that may or may not fit into his collection. So I'm just going to grab it. I'll send it to him. If it fits into his collection, great. If not, it was only a few bucks. So, not the end of the world by any means." So decided to grab that. So that was kind of just a cool little fun thing to do, to just grab a card for somebody else and hope that they can enjoy and appreciate it. So yeah, I know Kurt already has that card and we've talked about it, but yeah, just really cool to be able to find something purely for somebody else and just pass it along and hopefully find a better home for it. So that was fun. And then after we got through that back area, we kind of decided to split and go our own ways again and kind of, say if there's anything we want to circle back on, cool. And I think that's actually when we met up with Rob out in the lobby and we were talking for a little bit and that was pretty fun. And then from there, we kind of went our own ways. But yeah, so after that, I ended up messaging our buddy Jeremy Lee because I knew he was obviously there with Tag. So I wanted to meet up with him and just say hey and talk for a few minutes. And I knew that Matt had told him about the Flurry PMG when they were at the dinner on Thursday night. So I wanted to show him that card in person so he could see it. And then also I brought the Vesna buckle card back on Saturday so that he could take a look at it in person too, because I knew he would just enjoy seeing it with his own eyes. So that was pretty fun. And yeah, just obviously Jeremy's a great guy and really enjoyable to just talk with for a few minutes and stuff. So I always make a point of that at every show that I know he's at to meet up with him for a few minutes. And that's always a highlight for sure. So from there, I was kind of like, okay, I've seen everything. Like, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to make another lap? Do I want to, go back to anything, whatever? And, I mentioned Stefan's booth a few times. I had already been there, 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, let me just go back over there, see if he's got anything new. Cause I could kind of tell that he was, rotating through inventory somewhat regularly. Like the dollar boxes was pretty much the same. And his like higher end showcases were fairly consistent, but that like mid-end box that's where I got the Spencer Knight Exquisite card from, I could tell that box he was circulating through inventory pretty quickly. So I was like, I'm going to go back and see if there's anything interesting there. So going back to Friday, one of the cards that I had sold to the vendor was a Bobby Hall autograph card. So as I'm going back to Stefan's booth and I'm looking through, he has a really cool from Leaf Art of Hockey. Fittingly, it's a red version and it's also fittingly numbered out of 9 autograph of Bobby Hull that I got for $25. So I was like, you know what? Like, that's a no-brainer. It's a beautiful card. I just sold a Bobby Hull autograph yesterday. I get another one for, pretty much a third of the price of what I sold the other one for. So that was just like a really cool, I was like, I saw it and I'm like, yep, that just makes sense to grab. It's just a beautiful card in person. I know, the scan is nice, but it doesn't really do the card justice at all. So yeah, that was just like a satisfying pickup for sure. And I obviously was glad that I ended up going back to his booth. And then kind of, I know, Matt, you had mentioned in that kind of middle room, even though it wasn't huge, there were a lot of quality tables. And I was walking through and there was a guy who had some hockey stuff. So I stopped and looked and he had this really nice, it's from SP Authentic, from the UD Authentic set, an autograph of Andrei Vasilevsky. So I grabbed that because I saw, his sticker price on the card I thought was really good, or at the very worst was fair. And I was like, hey, I can probably get him to knock off a few more bucks. So ended up getting what I thought was a really nice deal on that card, for a hard signed Vasilevsky auto from SP Authentic. Couldn't go wrong with that. And he was talking with somebody else that was at his booth. So in the meantime, I started flipping through his dollar bin. And kind of funny, he had a Ryan Dzingel autograph card, also from SP Authentic from 2020-21. And I didn't really think much of it because I thought I already had the card. But I kind of like made note of it, bought the Vasilevsky, and then left. And then I'm thinking, and I'm like, I should probably just check my list to make sure I do actually have that card. So I pull out my phone, pull out my spreadsheet. Sure enough, I didn't have that card. So I immediately scurry back over there and dig it back out. And that was a pretty quick buy to get the SP limited auto parallel of Dzingel for $5. Figured again, like, yeah, can probably get it on eBay for about that. But to just see it and grab it at a show, perfect. So definitely glad that I decided to check my list. And obviously, having needed it, was happy to have gotten it.
That just goes to show the importance of keeping a really good inventory of everything we have.
Yes.
I mean, not all of us can be Aaron Goldstein and have every single card of our player minus like 10. So he knows exactly which ones he needs if he runs into an Enroth. But
sometimes, I mean, I bought a duplicate before, but most times.
most times. That was really cool though, because those cards are so gorgeous, and there's still a couple flurries that I've yet to see for sale. So yeah, great snag at the end there, man.
Yeah, so at that point, I had kind of like I was like, okay, like I think I'm good. I'd actually started to head out. I was in the lobby and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make one more walkthrough of the first hall that I'd gone through on Thursday, which looking back on now, that kind of sounds crazy because that's a lot of extra walking and looking and stuff, and I was already exhausted. But I was like, maybe someone has something new that they got yesterday or today or whatever. So I'm gonna look through again. So I do that, didn't find anything. I was like, okay, like I'll head out. And then I was like, I'm just gonna stop by Stefan's booth one last time, just see if he has anything new that he put out in the last few hours. Why not? It's worth a shot. So I head back over there and I feel like pretty much the whole weekend, there were a lot of people at his booth because with these hockey only booths, when you have hockey people at the show and they find these booths, they're spending a lot of time there because they're like, hey, like this guy is a hockey guy. Like this is, a good booth for me to be at. So his booth was always pretty busy. And when I got there this last time, it was definitely very busy and I couldn't even like really get all the way up to his booth. So I was kind of like leaning over, trying to like look in his showcase, see if there was anything different. And I could see like half of this card and then could see the price tag. And I was like, okay, that might be something, if I can get a better look at, what this is and make sure it is what I think it is, then, this might be something to grab. And so finally, a couple people leave and I'm able to kind of scooch over and get a better look at the card. And, sure enough, it is what I think it is. And, all throughout the weekend, Stefan was great about just being really easy to work with. And pretty much if you made an offer on something that was even somewhat reasonable, he was going to take it. No back and forth, just like he knew, what he wanted, or what he would take for stuff. And if you were in that range, boom, done. Great. He's not going to, milk an extra $5 out of you. It's just, yep, that's fair. Let's do it. So even at the sticker price that he had on this card, I would have bought it. But I was like, hey, I might as well try to get a little discount on it. So I threw out an offer and he was like, sure, like, let's do it. And yeah, this card definitely made me very happy that I decided to stick around and put a little bit more time into looking around because it's an extremely nice card just for what it actually is. But the set was very desirable back at the time, had really strong value, and you just don't see these cards. They were hard to find back then, but they're very difficult to find now if you're looking for them. It's from the 0304 in the game VIP set, which a lot of people don't really know about because it was kind of like an exclusive type of product that you could only buy if you were, I think, like a VIP within the game. So it was pretty hard to get a hold of. And this specific insert set was really desirable back in the day. So it's from the vintage memorabilia set, and it's one of the short prints out of 10. And it's a skate piece of Bill Barilko.
Oh, that's nice. Especially anyone who follows the Leafs really closely. Obviously, Leafs legend. That's awesome. Great card.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't see those every day. I don't know if I've ever seen a card from that set.
Yeah, you very well might not have, especially, a short print out of 10, they just don't come up. And they were big dollar cards back at the time. They still have decent value now, but yeah, so just being able to find that card. And again, that's another one, like definitely a show pickup. Like if I saw that on eBay, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't have any reason to grab it. I never even would have searched for it in the first place. But just seeing it, and for the price that I got it for, it was a total no-brainer. And again, definitely made me very glad that I stuck around and decided to head to his booth one last time. So yeah, I mean, to me, that's almost like, I would say probably my second favorite pickup from the show after the Ovechkin. So, to have my favorite and second favorite cards be the first and last card that I got at the show was pretty cool. And, once I got that card, I'm like, okay, now I can feel good about leaving. Like I'm happy, like let's call it a day. So yeah, just a really good way to end the show for me. And yeah, obviously, the Vezina rookie card, quote unquote, incident was frustrating and the grades were a little lower than I wanted. But outside of that, I was very happy with the show. 2 years ago, I only came away with, I think, 6 cards. And this time it was like 16-ish, somewhere around there. And, obviously, as you guys saw, a couple of really nice cards. So yeah, I was definitely really happy with my show. And that's about all I have. Is there any wrap up stuff that you want to add, Matt?
Yeah, well, I do want to say too, before I'm sure Aaron wants to get in here too and share his thoughts, but it was really nice to see that you were able to bounce back from the way it started. I felt like you started kind of in the middle and kind of dipped way down and were kind of had your spirits broken a little bit. And but by the end of the show, you had to kind of built it all the way back up. You know, you were feeling really good about your time spent there and everything. And I did too. I was just as equally, if not more excited to spend time with you and Rob and Mitch and all those other hockey guys. And I got to see some guys that I had met at 2019 when I was there at the National Baseball Collectors. We took a big group photo. The guys I do the Essential Credentials podcast with, Will, Jeremy, and his brother, Will's brother Chris, were there. Unfortunately, Ryan couldn't make it, but to hang out with those guys, that was amazing. Just in general, it was beyond what expectations I might have set for myself, but I definitely really was stoked with the cards. Yeah, and the interactions I had with that father and son, that was awesome. The dealers were all super nice. All the hockey guys were very passionate dealers, just like we are collectors. And sure, there was a couple overpriced cards that you and I got to laugh about. Like, okay, come on, like, all right, let's go. But just see everything that was there, not just hockey, but to see everything that was there. A game used Bobby Orr jersey and like Babe Ruth bats, and it was just the Honus Wagner card. I mean, I could go on, but it was an experience, and it is something that I will remember forever. I've already hung up my early entry badge that I splurged for because I wanted us to be able to get in. Although Eric didn't have to worry about that, he got a media pass, so this dude was hooked up from the beginning. But in general, I was very pleased with the trip, and I can't wait to go back in 2 more years. And it's gonna. I have the lay of the land. I'm sure there's going to be the exact amount of floors space opened up, so we kind of know which dealers are going to be where most likely, and hopefully by then they've got all sorts of good loot, as we could say, hanging out. But yeah, I'm very pleased. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, the only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 is it was so hot. I wore my Aaron. I wore my Minnesota Wild Flurry jersey the first day. I was representing hard, you know. And by the end of that, I had to take it off. But I think at like 12, I was sweating so much. It was so hot in there. But I represented. I did.
And that's awesome. I mean, you definitely represented the Flurry crew and the goalie crew, just definitely loud and clear. But I think you paid a price a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just going to jump in for like 2 seconds. If you could name one item, maybe it could be a card that was just so out of this world awesome. Maybe it was one that you acquired, or just a card that you saw in a display case or a piece of memorabilia. You mentioned this a little bit, Matt, but if there was one item for both of you that you saw at the show that was like, wow, that's awesome, what would it be? Could be hockey or non-hockey, whatever.
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say my favorite addition from the show was the banner auto. I've seen that card many times and it's just perfect as a Penguins fan. It's the 0910 or the 09 Cup. He's in his Cup gear. He's got the Cup patch. You could see the playoff beard. The card is perfect in every way. I still can't believe I found it. But I mean, oh, there's so many choices. I love the Bobby Orr jersey. I keep going back to that. The significance of that jersey. The Flurry playoff jersey was cool, but he didn't even, who knows if he played in that when he could have been sitting on the bench in the finals when he wore that jersey, which is probably why Flurry doesn't have it. So I would say the Bobby Orr jersey. I mean, I remember his highlight. Everybody knows the goal. I was on the very first hockey video I ever watched as a kid. That was my favorite piece there. It just blew my mind to see a jersey like that there. So, and then the Vesna pad buckle, to see that card with my own eyes, and the Flurry card, of course, too. Yeah, just I cheated a bit, but the Orr jersey for sure.
Yeah, that's a good answer for sure. Kind of funny with the Flurry PMG. I know when we were talking ahead of the show, you're like, oh man, like I don't even know if I'll see any cool or nice Flurry cards. And when you said that to me, I'm like, oh, you will. Don't worry. You'll see something nice.
But he sure knocked my socks off when he pulled that thing out of a case to show. But it was awesome to know that I think I've said this too. It's nice to know that it's in the family of collectors per se, that I know Eric's going to love that card, especially being a Blackhawks and hearing about Eric's history with that team. I'm sure you've talked about it on the podcast already. I was like, I mean, it put me at ease even more. Like, for some reason, I know if like push came to shove and you had to move it, hopefully you'd think of me. But I'm really happy that it's in your collection and you're going to love it and appreciate it. And to see the tag process, that was like a bonus for me. I'm like, this is so cool, man. Like now I'm convinced. So it worked out perfect. It all around, it worked out perfect. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, to answer your question, Aaron, I would say, yeah, seeing a Bobby Orr jersey, you just don't see those every day. You'll see Gretzky jerseys and, stuff like that, but you don't see very many Bobby Orr jerseys. So that was really cool. The same booth, it was an auction house's booth, but they had that and the Wagner rookie card. So that was pretty cool to see, like basically side by side, just like two amazing pieces. Of course, there was the Babe Ruth bat that everyone was excited about. There was a Mickey Mantle graded 9 rookie card that I believe that auction house estimated it would be a $6 million card in their upcoming auction. So, I mean, seeing something like that, you're just in awe, like, oh my goodness, like that's just crazy. That was pretty cool, of course. For me, one that really stuck out is there was a different auction house that were showing off some of the cards that would be in their auction, and they actually had a Vesna SGC 20 rookie card, which is the exact same grade that I have, same company, same grade, same everything. It's the only time I've ever seen another SGC 20. So that was just fascinating to me. But what was really interesting about it is the front of the card is like perfect, like literally almost perfect. And Matt, you can speak to that too. I mean, you look at this thing and you're like, what's the deal? Like, why is this a 20? Like the front of this card is literally like almost spotless, like fresh out of the cigarette pack, pretty much. And so, I had seen that card earlier in the show. And then on Saturday, I was like, I'm going to go back over and just ask if they're willing to take it out of the case and see if I can look at it, with my own eyes, because you can only see the front of it when it's, in their display case. So I go over and I'm like, hey, do you mind if I take a look at it? They're like, oh, sure, no problem. So they dig out their key and open up the case and hand it to me. And I'm like, thinking like, what's on the back of this card? Like the back has just got to be trashed. Like something's going on here. So I flip it over and you could tell that someone had like glued or taped it into an album, because on each of the back corners, there's like missing paper. And you're just like, oh, like just imagine if that hadn't happened and this was like almost a perfect card. Like just imagine how much money that thing would be worth. Like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I've been keeping an eye on that auction. It'll be really interesting to see, because the eye appeal is just spectacular with that card. So even though it's the same grade as mine, I would definitely say that's a better card to have, just because the eye appeal of the front is incredible. But yeah, just to see the same grade of my card was really cool, because I'd never seen another one. I have a question too, because I know that I have an answer in my head. But Matt, is there anything that you came across or saw that you were thinking about buying that you didn't end up buying, that you may or may not regret having not grabbed?
I thought about that a little bit, and no, I mean there was another Flurry Cup patch auto, but that was the same booth that the guy wanted 120 for the sticker auto that sells for 50. So I didn't even ask about the price. I think he had said a hit parade guy had came by and cleaned out his Flurries, so that kind of made me go like, wonder what he had, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it'll pop up again for sale maybe when people open those hit parade boxes, but no, I felt pretty good about what I got and what I left with. I mean, I left with way more than I thought. So not for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I would say there are 3 that come to mind. Not necessarily, I would say 2 that like aren't regrets, but just like, oh, like that would be kind of interesting. The first one, I think I've talked in the past about a very distant relative of ours named Charles McVeigh, who played in the 20s and 30s, played for the Blackhawks, played for the New York Americans. And there was one of his those Matchbox cover cards that a guy had at his booth. I think it was a PSA 5, which is pretty darn good for those cards. I mean, you'll see them in like 2 and 3 and sometimes 4, but getting a 5 or above on those is pretty tough. So I was like, like that would kind of be interesting. I already have one, so that's why I didn't end up buying it. If I didn't have it, I definitely would have bought it. But yeah, I think he wanted like 80 or $85, and I was like, like I don't like it that much. But it was just cool to see, like I don't know that I've seen any of his cards at a show before, maybe once in the past, but yeah, that was just like, oh, cool. Like there he is. That's pretty cool. And then another one, actually, I don't think maybe I did. I think we might have been together at the Pittsburgh booth. The guy had one of the Patrick Kane Dominion Frozen Moment booklet auto cards. And that card depicts when Kane scored the 2010 Cup winning goal. and that's always kind of been a card that I wanted for my collection. And he had it. It was sitting there. He didn't have it earlier in the weekend, so it was kind of funny that he then had it. And he had it priced pretty high. And I was like I can't justify buying it anywhere near that price. But really cool to see the card in person, and yeah, that was cool. But then kind of one card that I do have minor regrets, and we were talking about this too, Matt, having not bought or tried to buy. A guy had a 2006-07 The Cup scripted swatches of Evgeny Malkin. So obviously a rookie year patch auto from the Cup of a legendary player. And in my opinion, the price wasn't too bad. It was probably more than I would have liked to have spent, but maybe I could have done a trade sale or, gotten the price down or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of one of those cards that, again, you'd never think of buying it, but you see it and then it's just like on your mind and you're thinking about it and thinking about it. And almost every day since the show, I keep thinking about like, oh, I kind of wish I had at least asked about that card because that was really cool. But it is what it is. But yeah, I think those are the ones for me.
Yeah, those were there was so many good cards in there. I mean, it was tough not to get pulled aside to look at all. I mean, there were so many shields and other amazing hockey cards there. It was just neat to lay your eyes on them even once in person. So yeah, amazing stuff there. Better than I expected for hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that'll pretty much do it. I feel like we've pretty thoroughly unpacked our experiences. So don't want to ramble on too much. But yeah, obviously, hope you guys enjoyed hearing about our experiences. Obviously, like we said, we had a great time, and it was definitely a pleasure getting to know you, Matt, and spend time with you. Really glad that it worked out that we could host you, and yeah, just had a really good time, sharing that experience with you. And yeah, glad that it worked out, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime. But yeah, thanks for joining us on the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing about our experiences. And yeah, we'll wrap it up, leave it at that. So as always, please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center Ice CC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.